Was anyone there?
You're not afraid of the dark, are you? Don't be afraid. Come with me. Do you want to play hide and seek? You hide, and I'll find you. You're going to die in there. Don't say I didn't warn.
Welcome back, everyone. Surprised? Good. Happy to see you guys. Good, I'm glad you're surprised. Sometimes it's best to expect the unexpected, am I right? Oh hey, thank you. The reason why there's axolotls at the end of the stream is because that used to be my old ending video. So it's kind of a throwback to the regulars. Welcome, everyone. You missed me. It's only been one day. I missed you too. Hi, everyone. Well, I think you're pretty too. Thank you. This is actually a surprise. I didn't post anywhere that I'd be here. I just thought I'd turn it on and say hi. I took a little bit of time to find some really good stories. And it's really late. Do you guys want some scary stories? Did I mention it on Discord? I don't remember. Spook 'em. No smooches from me. Those are really special. I know Joel likes to kiss everyone, but I use them sparingly. Well, I mean, it's a kind of secret stream. I didn't post it on Twitter. I didn't schedule it in. So technically, you'd only know if you were paying attention to Twitch or looking at my Discord. So in reality, this is just you and me here and no one else. Oh, I missed you too, Ninja. Hi, Demon. So it's kind of a secret. A little secret. Comfy loyalty stream. I like the sound of that. For those that are really committed and giving me their all, then you'd be here. And you are. Hey, Ted. Thank you for giving me some of your blood. I appreciate that. I like that. I like it when people do that. Twitch didn't notify me. I just happened to refresh my following page and you popped up. Well, isn't that lucky? Hey, Nano Gamer. Thank you. I appreciate that. That blood really will suffice, I suppose. How can I be loyal if I'm new? Well, because you heard me calling and you listened. So you must be loyal because you're here. Why don't we go inside? Hey, N8. Thank you so much for subbing. I appreciate the support. Thank you. I am doing well. I just wanted to spend some time with you guys and read some stories. Would you guys like that? Oh. Hi, Volt. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. Thank you for the support. That was really kind of you. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. And we did reach the conclusion of the Wit Grandma, by the way. If you go down there, I highlighted it just in case you missed it. Everything is okay, but I'm going to push back talking about my health a little bit later, I think. Today I just wanted to read stories, if that's okay. You guys ready for some spooks? Get cozy, turn off the lights, I have a handful of them, but I think I'm going to pick one since it's several parts. Thanks, Spooky. I really appreciate that. I hope these are good stories. They sounded pretty good from what I was reading. Thanks for doing a horror channel, right? Well, thank you for supporting. I appreciate that. Is everyone comfy and ready for some stories? Aw, thanks, Heroic. I appreciate that. Let's go. And good morning, everyone. Good morning and good evening. I've never been in a narration stream before. Well, welcome on in. Sometimes we read stories, sometimes we play games, sometimes we do interviews. But today I felt like some scary stories. Do you practice reading the stories? No. I just pick stories that sound like they might be good, and then I read to you. And then I ask you guys if you liked it and how I can improve, and then I try to do better from there. Now this is where you turn your lights off, and you turn the sound up, and you close your eyes, and you try to relax. It's just one of those nights, you know? Now if the music's too loud, let me know, okay? I'm going to turn on some different kind of background music. You guys hear that okay? Hey, Jess Jeffrey, thank you so much. I appreciate that. You don't want it to be too loud or too quiet. It's okay if you fall asleep, that's alright. Hopefully you have nightmares. I mean... What? I didn't say that. Alright. This one is called Bedtime. It's a several part story, and it's quite long. So let's see if we like the first part and we'll decide if we keep going, okay? Part 1. The beginning. Bedtime is supposed to be a happy event for a tired child. For me, it was terrifying. While some children might complain about being put to bed before they finish watching a film or playing their favorite video game, when I was a child, nighttime was something to truly fear. Somewhere in the back of my mind, it still is. As someone who's trained in the sciences, I can't prove that what happened to me was objectively real. But I can swear that what I experienced was genuine horror. A fear which in my life, I'm glad to say, has never been equaled. Hi, Hyde. Thank you so much. Welcome. I will relate it to you now as best I can. Make of it what you will, but I'll be glad to just get it off my chest. I can't remember exactly when it started, but my apprehension towards falling asleep seemed to correspond with my being moved into a room of my own. I was 8 years old at the time, and until then I had shared a room quite happily with my older brother. As is perfectly understandable for a boy 5 years my senior, my brother eventually wished for a room of his own, and as a result, I was given the room at the back of the house. It was a small, narrow, yet oddly elongated room, large enough for a bed and a couple of chest drawers, but not much else. I couldn't really complain because even at that age, I understood that we did not have a large house and I had no real cause to be disappointed, as my family was both loving and caring. It was a happy childhood during the day. A solitary window looked out into our back garden. Nothing out of the ordinary, but even during the day, the light which crept into that room seemed almost hesitant. As my brother was given a new bed, I was given their bunk air beds, which we used to share. While I was upset about sleeping on my own, I was excited at the thought of being able to sleep in the top bunk, which seemed far more adventurous to me. From the very first night, I remember a strange feeling of unease creeping slowly from the back of my mind. I lay on the top bunk, staring down at my action figures and cars strewn across the green blue carpet. As imaginary battles and adventures took place between the toys on the floor, I couldn't help but feel that my eyes were being slowly drawn towards the bottom bunk, as if something was moving in the corner of my eye, something which did not wish to be seen. The bunk was empty, impeccably made with a dark blue blanket tucked in neatly, partially covering two rather bland white pillows. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I was a child, and the noise slipping under my door from my parents' television bathed me in a warm sense of safety and well-being. I fell asleep. When you awaken from a deep sleep to something moving or stirring, it can take a few moments for you to truly understand what is happening. The fog of sleep hangs over your eyes and your ears even when lucid. Something was moving. There was no doubt about that. At first, I wasn't sure what it was. Everything was dark, almost pitch black, but there was enough light creeping in from the outside to outline that narrowly suffocating room. Two thoughts appeared in my mind almost simultaneously. The first was that my parents were in bed because the rest of the house lay both in darkness and in silence. The second thought turned to the noise, a noise which had obviously woken me. As the last cobwebs of sleep withered from my mind, the noise took on a more familiar form. Sometimes the simplest of sounds can be the most unnerving. A cold wind whistling through the tree outside, a neighbor's footsteps uncomfortably close, or, in this case, the simple sound of bedsheets rustling in the dark. That was it. Bedsheets rustling in the dark as if some disturbed sleeper was attempting to get all too comfortable in the bottom bunk. I lay there in disbelief, thinking that the noise was either my imagination or perhaps just my pet cat finding somewhere comfortable to spend the night. It was then that I noticed my door, shut as it had been as I'd fallen asleep. Perhaps my mom had checked in on me and the cat had sneaked into my room then. Yes, that must have been it. I turned to face the wall, closing my eyes in the vain hope that I could fall back to sleep. As I moved, the rustling noise from underneath me ceased. I thought that I must have disturbed my cat, but quickly I realized that the visitor in the bottom bunk was much less mundane than my pet trying to sleep, and much more sinister. As if alerted to and disgruntled by my presence, the disturbed sleeper began to toss and turn violently, like a child having a tantrum in their bed. I could hear the sheets twist and turn with increasing ferocity. Fear then gripped me, not like the subtle sense of unease I had experienced earlier, but now potent and terrifying. My heart raced as my eyes panicked, scanning the almost impenetrable darkness. I let out a cry. As most young boys do, I instinctively shouted on my mother. I could hear something stir on the other side of the house, but as I began to breathe a sigh of relief that my parents were coming to save me, the bunk bed suddenly started to shake violently as if gripped by an earthquake, scraping against the wall. I could hear the sheets below me thrashing around as if someone tormented by malice. I didn't want to jump down to safety as I feared the thing in the bottom bunk would reach out and grab me, pulling me into the darkness. So I stayed there, white knuckles clenching my own blanket like a shroud of protection. The wait seemed like an eternity. The door finally, and thankfully, burst open, and I lay bathed in light while the bottom bunk, the resting place of my unwanted visitor, lay empty and peaceful. I cried and my mother consoled me. Tears of fear, followed by relief, streamed down my face. Yet through all of the horror and relief, I did not tell her why I was so upset. I can't explain it, but it was as though whatever had been in that bunk would return if I even so much as spoke of it, or uttered a single syllable of its existence. Whether that was the truth, I do not know, but as a child I felt as if that unseen menace remained close, listening. My mother lay in the empty bunk, promising to stay there until morning. Eventually my anxiety diminished. Tiredness pushed me back towards sleep, but I remained restless, waking several times momentarily to the sound of rustling bed sheets. I remember the next day wanting to go anywhere, be anywhere, but in that narrow, suffocating room. It was a Saturday and I played outside quite happily with my friends. Although our house was not large, we were lucky to have a long sloping garden in the back. We played there often. As much of it was overgrown as we could hide in the bushes, climb in the huge sycamore tree which towered above all else, and easily imagine ourselves in the throes of grand adventure in some untamed exotic land. And hello everyone coming in. As fun as it all was, occasionally my eye would turn to that small window. Ordinary, slight, and innocuous. But for me, that thin boundary was a looking glass into a strange, cold pocket of dread. Outside, the lush green surroundings of our garden, filled with the smiling faces of my friends, could not extinguish the creeping feeling clawing its way up my spine, each hair standing on end. The feeling of something in that room, watching me play, waiting for the night when I would be alone, eagerly filled with hate. It may sound strange to you, but by the time my parents ushered me back into that room for the night, I said nothing. I didn't protest. I didn't even make an excuse as to why I couldn't sleep there. I simply and sullenly walked into that room, climbed the few steps to the top bunk, and then I waited. As an adult, I'd be telling everyone about my experience, but even at that age, I felt almost silly to be talking about something which I really had no evidence for. I would be lying, however, if I said that this was my primary reason. I still felt that this thing would be enraged if I so much as spoke of it. It's funny how certain words can remain hidden from your mind, no matter how blatant or obvious they are. One word came to me that second night, lying there in the darkness, alone, frightened, aware of a rotten change in the atmosphere, a thickening of the air as if something had displaced it. As I heard the first casual twists of the bed sheets below, the first anxious increase of my heartbeat, at the realization that something was once again in the bottom bunk. That word, a word which had been sent into exile, filtered up through my consciousness, breaking free of all repression, gasping for air, screaming, etching, and carving itself into my mind. Ghost. Or John Cena. As this thought came to me, I noticed that my unwelcome visitor had ceased moving. The bedsheets lay calm and dormant, but they had been replaced by something far more hideous. A slow, rhythmic, rasping breath heaved and escaped the thing below. I could imagine its chest rising and falling with each sordid, wheezing and garbled breath. I shuddered and hoped beyond all hope that it would leave without occurrence. The house lay as it had that previous night in a thick blanket of darkness. Silence prevailed, all but for the perverted breath of my as yet unseen bunkmate. I lay there, terrified. I just wanted this thing to go and leave me alone. What did it want? Then something unmistakably chilling transpired. It moved. It moved in a way different from before. When it threw itself around in the bottom bunk, it seemed unrestrained, without purpose, almost animalistic. This movement, however, was driven by awareness, with purpose, with a goal in mind. For that thing lying there in darkness, that thing which seemed intent on terrorizing a young boy, calmly and nonchalantly sat up. Its labored breathing had become louder, as now only a mattress and a few flimsy wooden slats separated my body and the unearthly breath below. I lay there, my eyes filled with tears. A fear which mere words cannot relate to you or anyone else coursed through my veins. I would not have believed that this fear could have been heightened, but I was so wrong. I imagined that this thing would look like, sitting there listening from below my mattress, hoping to catch the slightest hint that I was awake. Imagination then turned into an unnerving reality. It began to touch the wooden slats which my mattress sat on. It seemed to caress them carefully, running what I imagined to be fingers and hands across the surface of the wood. Then, with great force, it prodded angrily between the two slats into the mattress. Even through the padding, it felt as though someone had viciously struck their fingers into my side. It let out an almighty cry, and the wheezing, shaking, and moving thing in the bunk below replied in kind but violently vibrating the bunk as it had done the night before. Small flakes of paint powdered onto my blanket from the wool as the frame of the bed scraping along it, backwards and forwards. Once again I was bathed in light, and there stood my mother, loving, caring as she always was, with a comforting hug and calming words, which eventually subdued my hysteria. Of course she asked what was wrong, but I couldn't say. I dare not say. I simply said one word over and over and over again. Nightmare. What do you guys think so far? Hi everyone coming in, how are you? To those that picked up the merch, thank you so much. I really hope you enjoy it, and thank you for the support. Are you guys having a good evening? I'm not a creepypasta girl, but I like this. Well, thanks. Sometimes I like to just read for people to relax, you know? Welcome, by the way. Oh, I'm sorry, Chaos. It's been kind of chaotic since COVID. Alright, let's keep going, shall we? Oh, thank you. Again, if the music is too loud, just let me know, okay? This pattern of events continued for weeks, if not months. Night after night, I would awaken to the sound of rustling sheets. Each time I would scream so as to not provide this abomination with time to prod and feel for me. With each cry, the bed would shake violently, stopping with the arrival of my mother, who would spend the rest of the night in the bottom bunk, seemingly unaware of the sinister force torturing her son nightly. Along the way, I managed to feign illness a few times and come up with other less than truthful reasons for sleeping in my parents' bed, but more often than not, I'd be alone for the first few hours of each night in that place. The room where the light from outside did not sit right, alone with that thing. With time, you can become desensitized to almost anything, no matter how horrific. I had come to realize that, for whatever reason, this thing could not harm me when my mother was present. I'm sure the same would have been said for my father, but as loving as he was, waking him from sleep was almost impossible. After a few months, I had grown accustomed to my nightly visitor. Do not mistake this for some unearthly friendship. I detested the thing. I still feared it greatly, as I could almost sense its desires and its personality, if you could call it that. One filled with a perverted and twisted hatred, yet longing for me, of perhaps all things. My greatest fears were realized in the winter. The days grew short, and the longer nights merely provided this wretch with more opportunities. It was a difficult time for my family. My grandmother, a wonderfully kind and gentle woman, had deteriorated greatly since the death of my grandfather. My mother was trying her best to keep her in the community as long as possible. However, dementia is a cruel and degenerative illness, robbing a person of their memories one day at a time. Soon she recognized none of us, and it became clear that she would need to be moved from her house to a nursing home. Before she could be moved, my grandmother had a particularly difficult few nights, and my mother decided that she would stay with her. As much as I loved my grandmother and felt nothing but anguish at her illness, to this day I feel guilty that my first thoughts were not of her, but of what my nightly visitor may do should it come aware of my mother's absence. Her presence being the one thing which I was sure was protecting me from the full horror of this thing's reach. I rushed home from school that day and immediately wrenched the bed sheets and mattress from the lower bunk, removing all of the slats and placing an old desk, a chest of drawers, and some chairs, which we kept in a cupboard where the bottom bunk used to be. I told my father I was making an office, which he found adorable, but I would be damned if I'd give that thing a place to sleep for one more night. As darkness approached, I lay there knowing my mother was not in the house. I didn't know what to do. My only impulse was to sneak into her jewelry box and take a small family crucifix, which I had seen there before. While my family was not very religious, at that age I still believed in God and hoped that somehow this would protect me. Although fearful and anxious, while gripping the crucifix under my pillow tightly in one hand, sleep eventually came as I drifted off to dream. I hoped that I would awaken in the morning without incidents. Unfortunately, that night was the most terrifying of all. I woke gradually. The room was once again dark. As my eyes adjusted, I could gradually make out the window and the door, the walls, some toys on a shelf, and even to this day, I shudder to think of it, for there was no noise, no rustling of sheets, no movement at all. The room felt lifeless, yet not empty. The nightly visitor, that unwelcome, wheezing, hate-filled thing which had terrorized me night after night, was not in the bottom bunk. It was in my bed. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. Utter terror had shaken the very sound from my voice. I lay motionless. If I could not scream, I did not want to let it know I was awake. I had not yet seen it. I could only feel it. It was obscured under my blanket. I could see its outline and I could feel its presence, but I dared not look. The weight of it pressed down on top of me, a sensation I will never forget. When I say that hours passed, I don't exaggerate. Laying there motionless in the darkness, I was every bit of scared and frightened young boy. If it had been during the summer months, it would have been light by then, but the grasp of winter is long and unrelenting, and I knew would be hours before sunrise. A sunrise which I yearned for. I was a timid child by nature, but I reached a breaking point. A moment where I couldn't wait, where I could survive under this intimately deviant abomination no longer. Fear can sometimes wear you out, make you threadbare, a shell of nerves leaving only the slightest trace of you behind. I had to get out of that bed. Then I remembered the crucifix. My hand still lay underneath the pillow, but it was empty. I slowly moved my wrist around to find it, minimizing as best as I could the sound and vibrations caused, but it could not be found. I had either knocked it off the top bunk or it had... I could not bear to think of it. Been taken from my hand. Without the crucifix, I lost any sense of hope. Even at such a young age, you can be acutely aware of what death is and intensely frightened of it. I knew I was going to die in that bed if I lay there, dormant, passive, doing nothing. I had to leave that room behind, but how? Should I leap from the bed and hope that I make it to the door? What if it's faster than me? Should I slowly slip out of that top bunk, hoping to not disturb my uncanny bedfellow? Realizing that I had not stirred when I moved, trying to find the crucifix, I began to have the strangest thoughts. What if it was asleep? It hadn't so much as breathed since I had woken up. Perhaps it was resting, believing that it had finally got me? That I was finally in its grasp? Or perhaps it was toying with me. After all, it had been doing just that for countless nights, and now with me under it, pinned against my mattress with no mother to protect me, maybe it was holding me off. Savoring its victory until the last possible moment, like a wild animal savoring its prey. I tried to breathe as shallowly as possible, and mustering every ounce of courage I could, I reached over slowly with my right hand and began to peel the blanket off of me. What I found under those covers almost stopped my heart. I did not see it, but as my hand moved the blanket, it brushed against something. Something smooth and cold. Something which felt unmistakably like a gaunt hand. I held my breath in terror, as I was sure it must now have known that I was awake. Nothing. It did not stir. It felt dead. After a few moments, I placed my hand carefully further down the blanket and felt a thin, poorly formed forearm. My confidence and almost twisted sense of curiosity grew as I moved down further to disappropriately large bicep muscle. The arm was outstretched, lying across my chest, with the hand resting on my left shoulder as if it had grabbed me in my sleep. I realized that I would have to move this cadaverous appendage if I even so much as hoped to escape its grasp. For some reason, the feeling of torn, ragged clothing on the shoulder of this nightmare invader stopped me in my tracks. Fear once again swelled in my stomach and in my chest as I recoiled my hand in disgust at the touch of strangled, oily hair. I couldn't bring myself to touch its face, although I wondered to this very day what it would have felt like. Dear God, it moved. It moved. It was subtle, but its grip on my shoulder and across my body strengthened. No tears came, but God, how I wanted to cry. As its hand and arm slowly coiled around me, my right leg brushed along the cool wall which the bed lay against. Of all that happened to me in that room, this was the strangest. I realized that this clutching, rancid thing, which drew great delight from violating a young boy's bed, was not entirely on top of me. It was sticking out from the wall like a spider striking from its lair. Suddenly its grip moved from a slow tightening to a sudden squeeze. It pulled and clawed at my clothes as if frightened that the opportunity would soon pass. I fought against it, and its emaciated arm was too strong for me. Its head rose up, writhing and controlling under the blanket. I now realized where it was taking me. It was taking me into the wall. I fought for my dear life. I cried, and suddenly my voice returned to me, yelling, screaming, but no one came. Then I realized why it was so eager to suddenly strike. Why this thing had to have me now. Through my window, that window which seemed to represent so much malice from outside, streaked hope. The first rays of sunshine. I struggled further, knowing that if I could just hold on, it would soon be gone. As I fought for my life, the unearthly parasite shifted, slowly pulling itself up from my chest, its head now poking out from under the blanket, wheezing, coughing, rasping. I do not remember its features. I simply remember its breath against my face, foul and as cold as ice. As the sun broke over the horizon, the dark place, that suffocating room of contempt, was washed, bathed in sunlight. I passed out as its scrawny fingers encircled my neck, squeezing the very life from me. I awoke to my father offering to make me some breakfast. A wonderful sight indeed. I'd survived the most horrible experience of my life until then and now. I moved the bed away from the wall, leaving the furniture I had believed would stop that thing from taking a bed. Little did I think it would truly try to take mine and me. Weeks passed without incidents, yet on one cold, frost-bitten night, I awoke to the sound of furniture where the bunk beds used to be, vibrating violently. In the moment it passed, I lay there, sure I could hear a distant wheezing coming from deep within the wall, finally fading into the distance. I've never told anyone this story before. To this day, I still break out in cold sweat at the sound of bedsheets rustling in the night, or a wheeze brought on by a common cold, and I certainly never sleep with my bed against a wall. Call it superstition if you will, but as I said, I cannot discount conventional explanations such as sleep paralysis, hallucination, or that of an overactive imagination, but what I can say is this. The following year, I was given a larger room on the other side of the house, and my parents took that strangely suffocating, elongated place as their bedroom. They said they didn't need a large room, just one big enough for a bed and a few things. They lasted 10 days. We moved on the 11th. It's the end of part 1. What'd you guys think? If you're sleeping up against a wall, maybe you better be a little bit more careful. Yeah, only part 1. Thank you everyone for tuning in to this secret, special, random occasion stream. Glad to see you guys. Is it Magi Day 2007? I apologize if I pronounced it wrong, but welcome. I'm in bed up against the wall right now. Why must you do this? Well, you better not lay too close. Akami, thank you so much. That's really kind of you. Thank you so much, and it's lovely to meet you. Hello, Grim Reaper. Let's see how long part 2 is. Wow. There's lots of parts to this story. I don't think I've heard part 2 before. One-Eyed King. Thank you for providing some of your blood for me. I appreciate that. I do hope you enjoy your stay. Aw, Ninja, thank you so much for the support. I appreciate that very much. That really means a lot to me, you guys. Thank you. And Kevin, thank you so much for gifting that. I'm really glad that you all are enjoying this. How many parts? I don't know. Let's see. See, part 2. Part 3. Wow, this is a long part 3. Part 5. Oh, maybe we'll do some more random streams and read through the rest of the stories. Goodness gracious. There's like 6 parts to this thing. I didn't even know. Cool. I mean, we did just start. Maybe it's a really long reading stream. But maybe not. I guess you'll have to find out. Aww. Musaka, thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that so much. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Hey, don't forget, by the way. Does this kid marry this ghost? I know, it's a long time. Don't forget about the bloodbath. Do you guys want to see a little peek, or do you want to be surprised? Hey, thank you for following. I appreciate that. How far are we away from the bloodbath? I didn't even see. Oh, look at that. We're getting closer. Yeah. When we hit 2,000 subscribers on the channel, we're gonna have an all day, or I wouldn't say all day, but a really long stream, a big event, where the entire environment that is being made by Vizonia right now, she's making an entirely new 3D scene, and I'm making a new outfit and hair just for you guys. I'll be spending the whole stream in a bloodbath, Just think of a really, really, really giant bathhouse, but blood and intestines instead. Yeah. So it's like a hot tub stream, but blood instead. You know, because blood's better. Yeah. Oh, lasagna's dead. You guys reckon we'll be able to make it sometime? It's kind of a big goal. I wonder if I'm overshooting. It's okay. Even if it takes a year, we'll get there. Oh, that's really cute. I'm sad that I missed that from Silver. What? I didn't even know. We'll make it. We'll make it. No, I don't have her cowboy hat, actually. I did murder lasagna. Yeah. Yeah, I did. Everyone coming in, thank you for being here. We're reading part 2 of a story. So, when does the counter reset? It doesn't. The counter never resets. I mean, it does sometimes per month, you know, as people come and go. But right now, I think it reset the other day. I don't know if lasagna's coming back anytime soon. Hello everyone, welcome on in. Hey, thank you so much for resubbing for 32 months, Court. How does it feel? I did say that. Well, let me say something else. I was going to do at 2,000 subs that you guys would get special socks. But I've been looking around and I haven't been finding any good places to make them. So why don't we meet in the middle and I'll make you guys a mini body pillow. Specially made with a unique design. You guys want a pillow? I'll make a pillow for you. Yeah? I'll work on a design with Caro and we'll make it double-sided. But sorry, that's only if we make it to 2,000 subs. Oh, hi Kraken. You missed the first part, but don't worry. We can catch you up. How are you? Hello, welcome. And Gargoyle, thank you so much for subbing at tier 2. That's amazing, you didn't have to do that. Thank you. If you want pants, I can give you pants, but most people voted for pillow. One side of me and the other of me, you know. Wouldn't you like that? Double-sided of me. Alright, but let's get back to it, shall we? So the first part of the story, if people are just now coming in, he was telling a story of when he was really young and he was in a room, in a bunk bed, and something was perpetually trying to, I guess at the end, pull him through the wall. This old and gross, oily and disgusting and decrepit sort of feeling body that was on top of him. But he moved out of the room. So now we're on part 2. Yeah? You guys ready? Aw. Icky dirt nasty. Thank you so much for helping the community and gifting everyone those subs. I appreciate it. You didn't have to do that, but thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed your stay. Icky dirt nasty. I like your name. Oh no. Sometimes I tend to gather ghosts around people's houses. I'm sorry. But I'm kind of not sorry. It's kind of the point of witching hour, isn't it? Thank you so much for the support and hi, bunny boy. Alright, let's get started, shall we? Also, if anyone comes in while I'm reading, chat, you're more than welcome to be like, hey, she's reading a story. She'll stop in a bit. But you guys have been really kind about that. I try my best not to stop while I'm reading, so... Alright. Part 2. Hold on, I made the text really big, so now I don't see what the part is. My eyes are old. Okay, here we go. Hi, Spry, how are you? Part 2. After writing my account of a horrific experience I had as an 8-year-old child, many have encouraged me to speak about the aftermath. I've been hesitant to do so as I felt unsettled since I broke my silence. Sleep has not come easy to me these last few nights. My skepticism, however, remains resilient, and as such I will tell of what I experienced in the other room. This won't be as long, as what occurred only took place over a few days, but that was more than enough for me. If you recall, after that unwelcome nightly visitor left me, I was moved into another bedroom a year later. This room was much larger than the previous one and had a warm and welcoming atmosphere to it. Some places feel bad. The room before felt foul, but this one did not. Thankfully, I was given a normal bed. The previous one was taken apart and thrown out. A welcome sight, I might add. I loved my new bedroom. I enjoyed the space for all of my toys. I was happy that the place was large enough to have my friends drop by, but most of all, I was relieved to just be out of that uneasy, foreboding part of the house. On the first night, I slept more soundly than I had done for a long, long time. Of course, I still moved my bed several feet from the wall. I told my mother that I and my friends liked to use the gap between the bed and wall as a hiding place when we were playing. On the first night, I woke the next day feeling refreshed and relaxed. As I lay there watching some of my favorite cartoons on a small portable television, I noticed something odd. An old dark brown armchair, which had always been there, sat at the foot of my bed, large and looming. It was frayed and worn, having been given to us as part of a set by my cousin, but it had been used many times even by then. The chair itself was not unusual, but what unsettled me was that I could have sworn that before I had went to sleep, the chair had been facing away from the bed. Now in the cold light of day, the chair was facing me. I assumed one of my parents had moved it while I slept, probably looking for something which had been left there before we switched rooms. The second night was not as restful. It was around 11 p.m. and I could hear my parents' television from the other side of the house. The room was largely in darkness. The only illumination, an orange hue drifting through my window from the streetlights outside. I lay there, content until I heard something quiet, yet unmistakable. At first I thought it was the sound of my own breath exhaling and inhaling as I rested, but when I stopped for a moment, the quiet, almost inaudible sound of someone else in the room breathing in and out did not cease. It continued, rhythmically and without pause. I lay there in the darkness, but while I was still recovering from the terror instilled in me from my experience in my previous bedroom, I was not entirely afraid. The breathing was so distant and unlike the wheezing I had heard during my encounter with that thing in the wall that I remained calm, and even at that early age I believed it was so subtle that it was probably my imagination playing tricks on me. Still, I took no chances. I stepped out of bed, walked across the room, and turned the light on. The sound had gone. I stared at the old, worn armchair facing the foot of my bed, which was within reaching distance of where I slept, and turned it around to face the other way. I had no real reason to do so, but something about it sitting there filled me with dread. The third night, I was not so fearless. Again, I awoke in darkness. Lying on my back, I stared up at the ceiling, which seemed to happily absorb the dim orange light from the street. The tree outside my window swayed in a calm breeze, casting a strange collection of improbable moving shadows across the room. I could hear nothing but the long and distant hum of the city's night traffic. Just as I began to drift to sleep, I heard it. A creak from the bottom of my bed, as if something had moved or shifted its weight on the floor. I raised my head, peering through the darkness, but saw nothing strange. Everything sat as it had done throughout the day. Nothing was out of place. I cast my gaze across the room, some comics on the floor, a few boxes which had still to be unpacked, the armchair unmoved, still facing away from the bottom of my bed. There was nothing sinister here. I was now fully awake, glancing over at my television, considering whether or not to enjoy some late night TV. I'd have to keep the volume low, of course, as my older brother would hear it in the next room and no doubt tell me to switch it off. Just as I sat up fully in bed, I heard it again. A low creak, accompanied by a sound. The sound of the slightest of movements. I looked again at the room. The dim orange shadows cast by the leaves hanging by my window now took on a more menacing form. I still saw no reason to be afraid. I stared at the chair at the end of my bed and saw nothing unusual about it. It's quite common for the mind to take a moment to fully come to terms with what it's seeing. It takes time to put the full horror of what's in front of you together into a moment of cold, bitter realization. Yes, I was staring at that old worn armchair in the dark, but what I was also staring at was the person sitting in it. In the dim light, I could only see the outline of the back of its head, the rest obscured by the spine of the chair. I sat motionless, staring, praying, hoping that my eyes were being misled by their surroundings. The slow creak of movement as it shifted in its battered throne chilled me to my very core. There was no mere trick of the dark. Then it shifted onto its right side. I knew what it was doing. It was turning to look at me. It was difficult to make out, for even in that room it seemed darker than everything around it. I saw what looked like a collection of long fingers slip over the crest of the chair, and then another. The room was silent but for the sound of this thing shuffling in its seat and the crash of my racing heart. At first I could only make out the outline of its forehead, but then it began to rise up, revealing 2 pinpoints of light in the dark recesses of its deeply set eye sockets. It was staring at me. I screamed, and within a moment my brother and mother came into the room, switching the light on, asking if I'd had another bad dream. I sat speechless, barely acknowledging them, staring intently at the now empty armchair. I was only in that room for another few days before we suddenly moved. I saw nothing for the remaining nights except for my last sleep in that room where I woke to the warm air of something breathing into my ear. I jumped out of bed, turning the lights on. The slow rhythmic breath of something unseen remained louder than before. I spent the rest of that night on the couch in the living room. 2 years later, I slept soundly in my bed in our new house. There had been no other incidents, and I was sure I had left behind whatever strangeness had plagued me in that little average suburban home. I was, however, left with one parting gift. My tormentors. And in my opinion, the watcher in that armchair was a different entity to the thing in the elongated room. Had one last surprise in store for me. Like an animal claiming its territory, I was not entirely out with their grasp. For one last terrifying moment, I felt the presence of those things. I lay there sound asleep 2 years. Those horrifying experiences. I was in the throes of a nightmare and suddenly happily found myself awake, safe and sound in my bed. The room was darker than usual. I breathed a sigh of relief as one does when waking from a nightmare, but the room was too dark. I could see nothing at all, as if something had snuffed out the light. I chuckled to myself, realizing that I must have pulled my blanket up and over my face while sleeping. The cotton blanket felt cool against me, but the air was a little too warm, almost stifling. Just as I was about to remove the blanket for some air, I heard it. For the last time, I heard it. The rhythmic breathing of the watcher at the end of my bed. Fear then gripped me, followed by anger and despair. Why couldn't I be left alone? I then did something most peculiar. I decided to speak to it. Perhaps this thing didn't mean harm to me. Perhaps it was unaware of the terror it had caused. Surely a young boy deserves some mercy. As the breathing grew louder and closer, I began to cry. I could feel its presence on the other side of the blanket, its breath hanging over me like a stagnant wind. Through the tears, I uttered the words which surely would put an end to all of this. Please stop. The breathing began to change. It became more animated, quicker somehow. I could hear something shuffling next to me, standing close by. The breathing then moved, first back to the foot of my bed and then slowly across the room, through the door, into the hallway, and then gone. Half crying, half elated, I lay in the still darkness, my face still covered by the blanket. You may consider this a victory of some sort, but I don't. If those things were real, I know now beyond a shadow of doubt that their intentions were not misconstrued. They were twisted, filled with malice. I would normally never use such a word to describe anything, but it's as close to evil as I hope to ever come. How do I know that? I'll tell you how. Moments after that thing seemed to have left the house, something pressed forcefully down on top of me, pushing the blanket with great strength against my face. I could feel a large hand with long, thin fingers wrapping the covers around my skull. Its nails imprinted upon me like razor-sharp ridges. I managed to slide down into the gap between the bed and the wall, quickly making my escape, clamoring and screaming out of my room, waking my family. Make no mistake, that thing in the darkness tried to smother me. Smother me to death. It's the end of part 2. How's everyone doing? Whack. Part 3 is gonna be a problem, you reckon? I've embraced the fact that I'll keep wetting my pants. Is this your first time at a story or a like reading time, Kamui? Also, please go check out Kamui. He's a really adorable, cute forest fox. A Ku Sith, to be precise. But in short, he's a VTuber in Australia. So go check him out, okay? He's super, super nice. We just recently became friends. Thanks, Sprite. It's just Rock. Hi, how are you? I like Aussie accents. I mean, I'm a bit biased. I like Kiwi accents a bit more, but I like Aussie accents. I'm falling asleep and I want to stay up to hear you read. No, no, no. You close your eyes. You go to sleep. That's the whole point, I think. I'm surprised to see you guys here so late. I don't know if I've streamed this late before. 3:30 a.m. Precisely the time of the witching hour. Fantastic. Don't get too scared. My accent? I don't think I really have an accent. I've been in New Zealand for about 8 years, but I was born in Texas. But I spent a large portion of my life in LA. I don't think I have an accent. Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad I can help you through the graveyard shift especially. Just Jeffrey, no worries. Go take care of your family. I know I just got here, but we must part ways. No worries. Take it easy and see you in the future. Oh. I don't know any Americans here, so I'm constantly surrounded either. Well, my roommate's British. He's like got a really, really thick UK accent. And my partner is Kiwi, and no one around here is, no one for the most part is American. So I don't really hear any American voices unless I'm watching Twitch or something. So it could just be out of like habit. Hey, good luck on your assignment. You'll do great, okay, Predpool? Enjoy your breakfast while listening to stories. A LaCroix New Zealand accent. I don't know what that is. So and no. Yeah, maybe. No. 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 No, 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 no. Anyway, I guess let's get on to the next part, shall we? Hey man, go get some sleep and rest well, okay? Thanks for being here. Oh no. No, I don't want your ghost chips. Ghost chips. Hey bruh. Hi Elf, how are you? Welcome on in. Oh, well thank you for coming on through. I'm sorry that you lost your power. Is it Vich? Surprised I recommended Bright here, but I hope you enjoy your stay. I'm a leaf, but I have no idea what kind of accent I have anymore. What the hell does... Oh, Canadian. V-Witch. Ah, got it. Nice to meet you. You guys ready for part 3 now? I have no idea what part 3 will be, but hopefully it's good. Okay, let's begin. Part 3. My fears realized. If you have to go, don't worry. Take it easy, and see you next time. A few days ago, I submitted 2 nightmarish accounts from my childhood. Perhaps you best read them to truly comprehend what has befallen me. I'd been compelled to silence, gripped by the irrational fear that somehow, even after all these years, should I speak of it, that those things would come seek me out at once and wreak havoc on my life. In the name of science and reason, I confronted those fears and set out to vanquish those tormented memories once and for all, by sharing them with others, exposing them for what I believed they were, delusions of a troubled child. I've held on to my skepticism and rationality for dear life, and I have swallowed them to define me. I've allowed them to define me, excuse me. But this morning I was presented with verifiable physical evidence. Evidence of what I do not know, but it cannot be ignored. And it seems strange to me that the last days have been so tainted by apprehension and misfortune after finally breaking my silence that I can no longer rely upon entirely conventional explanations. In the wake of sharing this traumatic experience I had as a child, I've been plagued by an overwhelming sense of unease. Initially, I attributed this to the fear I had experienced in simply recounting and reliving those terrible events in my mind. But as the days passed, it felt like so much more. A feeling of impending doom consumed my every thought. While sleep came to me, rest did not. Each morning I awoke, my nerves on edge, as if deprived of sleep for an age. Nothing overtly frightening happened during the first few nights. No visitation, no unwelcome bedfellows, no wheezing breaths reaching out from deep within my bedroom walls, but I had that distantly familiar feeling of not being alone. Don't misunderstand, I don't sense someone in the room with me. I didn't hear or smell or feel anything remotely supernatural. But throughout my days and nights, I've sensed something subtle, almost on the periphery of my awareness, the feeling that something is on its way, something is coming. Like the first few stagnant blasts of air from a subway tunnel, heralding the arrival of a lurching, unstoppable monstrosity, surprising yet expected. My sense of unease grew with each passing day, pushing its way under my skin, deep into my mind like some form of cancerous infection. I tried to focus my attention on various writing projects in a vain attempt to fill my mind up to the brim with other thoughts, hopefully leaving no room for those contaminated memories, but those thoughts came to me nonetheless. My anxiety gained momentum until I couldn't think of anything else. I had to do something. I'd studied psychology for years at university. With this, I knew that anxiety is often the result of loss of control, and that one of the most effective ways to combat it is to empower oneself. This is what I intend to do. Call it foolhardy, but I was going to go back to that place. The house where those terrible events took place. I was going to confront those memories and expose them for what they were. Nonsense. It was an hour's drive to my old home, but it was one filled with elation. I was confident, at ease, happy. I was in control, and now nothing was going to get my way from showing that place I had feared my entire life. It was nothing but an average, humdrum, harmless little suburban home. Gleefully negotiating the country roads and then motorway, finally I made it to the city. Gradually the streets began to take on a familiar appearance. Memories of playing in that neighborhood came flooding back to me. A play park with my favorite slide, an ash pitch where we used to play football, my schoolyard filled with hide and seek friendships long since abandoned but never forgotten. My mind wandered through those memories like a prodigal son walking home. Wandered so much that before I realized it, I was pulling into the street where I had once lived. The road was long and disappeared far into the distance, finally entering into a sharp, blind turn. It was an old neighborhood and had been planned and built long before the advent of the car. This was evident by the narrowness of its roads, creating a strangely claustrophobic feeling, as if the house on each side rose up, leering at passers-by. I slowed my speed and cast my eye over each house that I had passed. It was a uniform place, and with every house looking not dissimilar. My heart suddenly began to beat faster as a cold chill crawled up my spine. There it was. there was the house. It was this late afternoon and the street was quiet, almost lonely. I stared at that little place, wondering how such an ordinary home could have instilled so much fear in me. I had initially intended to only look at the house from afar, confirming it to me as a material construction entirely explicable and removed from anything uncanny. But as I parked, I took a deep breath, and before I knew it, I was out of my car, walking towards that old metallic gate, its once bright floral shapes now darkened by aged, flaking, deep green paint, revealing nothing but rust beneath. I ran my fingers over its uneven top, and with a subtle gasp, I pushed it open. Walking along the path, I was shocked at how disused the garden was. I thought to myself how much of a waste of a good lawn it was, which was all but obscured by a thick mosaic of weeds and other invasive species, but as I neared the house, I realized why. It was unoccupied. Once again, a shudder crept through me, but as my anxiety rose up, I crushed it with my irrational mantra. The simplest of explanations is usually the correct one. I assumed that due to the current economic climate that the house had probably just been on the market for some time, and the owner wasn't too aware of the old sentiment that the first bite is with the eye. But as I looked around, I could see no for sale sign, no one to let. It genuinely seemed as though the house had been forgotten, abandoned, and left to rot. Also, here's the story for you guys if you'd like to follow along. The windows at the front of the house were filthy and as such almost impossible to see through, but as I wandered around to the back of the building, I could see more clearly inside. I would have imagined that a house such as this one would be empty, but on the contrary, it was entirely occupied by the trappings of a modern life. I could see a television sitting in the living room corner, a coffee table with magazines strewn across it, various pieces of furniture sitting as if ready to be used, and a couple of coffee cups sitting on the windows still full, covered in mold. I would have thought the house was lived in, if not for that thick layer of dust over everything, accompanied by the occasional spider web. It seemed as though the most recent occupants had left in a hurry and never returned. Clambering through a sea of waist-high grass and bushes, I eventually arrived at the innocuous little window at the back of the house. The very sight of it frightened me, but this was mere memory and not the strange feeling of being watched from within as I had experienced as a child. Peering in, the room looked eerily familiar. I suppose there's that little that can be done with a room so small, so oddly narrow, but through the dirt-covered glass, the room looked almost unchanged from when I had slept in it. A bed, a set of drawers, and what looked like an assortment of toys on the floor. A profound sense of anger washed over me momentarily, but I shook it quickly from my mind. The room was clearly that of a child's, and the thought of that thing harming another innocent filled me with contempt for such a thought, and within me swelled the desire to protect any child from such an abomination. As I gazed at that wall of which a bed lay alongside it, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. For a moment, and it was only the slightest, I thought I saw the blanket on top of the bed move. More than that, through the window pane, I could have sworn I heard a wheezing gasp. Closing my eyes tightly, I repeated another scientific mantra. Science does not owe its debts to imagination. Opening my eyes, I saw nothing but an empty bedroom. No foul spirits, no unearthly things, just a room. No more, no less. I breathed a sigh of relief as it that all was well with the world for the first time in many days. I think you meant all was well with the world. You think it was wishful thinking, but I genuinely felt that I had shown myself that there was nothing to be scared of, other than my overactive imagination. It was starting to get dark, and I wanted to be home before the night. Filled with confidence now that my anxieties were behind me, there was one last thing I needed to do. When we had left that house, we did so in a hurry. As a child, it was disorienting, even frightening to leave everything I knew behind, but there was one thing left which I always wondered about. At the bottom of the garden stood a sycamore tree, which looked to be even older than the house. I was amazed at how unchanged it was. I had grown up, gone on to pastures new, but the old sycamore still stood, wise, warm, almost friendly in its appearance. I think it's a rites of passage for any child to have a place to hide things. It's often their first experience with independence, something removed from any authority figure. For me, my stash was halfway up the old sycamore. I'm sure I must have looked like a fool, but I happily and gleefully climbed the tree with abandon. The configuration of the branches had changed in places, but overall the happy memories of playing amongst the limbs of the old sycamore, of having a little piece of the world to myself away from everyone else, seemed vivid, as it was remarkable how much remained unchanged. Good night, Spray. Halfway up, I caught my breath and smiled to myself. In the central trunk of the tree lay a hollow. Whether it had been created by an animal or perhaps the tug of a gale on a weekend branch long ago, I do not know, but it was where I kept things. If I found something which I was sure would be taken from me for being inappropriate into the hollow, it would go. The truth is, though, that the majority of the items inside were not very interesting. Mostly just toys and rarely exotic pieces of contraband like a slingshot or some smoke bombs. I had no reason to hide the toys, but when I was young, it felt adventurous to have a secret. The hollow was dark and filled halfway with rotting leaves, no doubt deposited there from countless autumns. Nevertheless, I reached deep inside to see what remained. I couldn't believe it. I'd found a toy that I had hidden there before we moved all those years ago. I could feel the plastic in my hand, its sharp edges unmistakable, but the leaves and darkness of the hollow obscured its view for me as I struggled to remove it from the thick, wet mixture of rotting leaves and rainwater. It seemed to be caught amongst a collection of small twigs. The reason I was so excited was that I knew when we moved that I had left one of my favorite toys behind. A small plastic First World War British soldier. It may not sound like much, but I had grown up on family stories of my grandfather's adventures during both wars, and while he had passed away before I was born, I would often act out exaggerated versions of the stories with the small soldier in the role of the hero. My intrepid grandfather. At the time, I thought a hollow the perfect hiding place for a soldier. My delight, however, quickly turned into horror. I felt sick to my stomach. For as I pulled the soldier out, I realized it was not my toy, but something else entirely. Stuffed into the back of the hollow amongst the sludge, and now in my hand, was the skeletal remains of a small animal. The bones crunched together in my grip as a few small flakes of hair and flesh left on it petrified between my fingers. I almost lost my balance as the rotten and potent smell of death escaped through my moist grasp, invading my senses. I climbed back down carefully, dejected. There was nothing else in the hollow. My toy was gone, probably taken by another child during the subsequent years. What remained of the poor animal I buried under some loose earth in the garden. I left that place immediately. Despite my unfortunate encounter in the hollow, I still felt empowered. I had actually plucked up the courage to revisit that place, see how ordinary it really was. It made me feel in control once more of my faculties. I didn't at the time require anything other than a conventional explanation. I said goodbye to the old neighborhood, to that my bad memory once and for all, and began to make my way home. By the time I had driven into the motorway, something had begun to filter through from the back of my subconsciousness. At first I disregarded it, dismissing it as my imagination, but as the sun shone its last and dipped below the horizon, I sensed the growing of a compulsion in me. An idea which seemed to have been born and nurtured for no good reason. No rationale, no sound casual footing, but one which had to be followed at all cost. I must get home. I increased my speed, zipping sporadically between the slower cars on the motorway, looking in the rearview mirror, keeping an eye on what might be following. I had to get home. Again, I drove faster, constantly looking behind me as if racing some unseen pursuer. 70, 80, 100 miles per hour. I tore along the road. I beeped. I yelled. The sweat lashed off of me. What was happening to me? Please, please just let me go home. White-knuckled, I finally made it off the motorway and onto the country roads which would lead directly to my town. The roads were narrow and wound around the now bleak and ominous countryside. Darkness seemed to blanket the road in front of me. I turned my full beam on and breathed a sigh of relief to see a bright light again, even if artificial. The manic anxiety which had seemed to grip me on the motorway appeared to have diminished. However, I still glared into the rearview mirror more often than I should have, just to make sure that there was nothing following me. What a ridiculous thought. To think something chasing my car? To put myself and others in danger by speeding down a busy motorway? Madness. Still, madness or not, I felt compelled to get away as quickly as possible, and even though I had managed to collect my nerves, the loneliness of the road I was on fueled my yearning for my own town, my own street, my own bed. Nervously, I traveled the web-like winding roads which seared through the countryside, feeling relieved at the first sign of a lamppost, of civilization, and of the boundaries of my town. I pulled up outside of my house, switching the engine off, and sat for a moment in silence. I had to stop all of this nonsense. Things coming out of walls, watches smothering me at night, looking into someone's window like a prowler. All of this is lunacy. Tomorrow, I would start afresh. No more writing about my childhood experiences, no more reliving of dread-filled nights, just getting back to normal, carrying out my work, spending time with my girlfriend, and most of all, reaffirming my belief, faith, and confidence in science and rationality. Then the thing in the back seat leaned over, grabbed me by the shoulder, and breathed a foul, rancid breath from deep inside its lungs and down the back of my neck. I scrambled for the door, my arms flailing around looking for the lock. Fear possessed me, shook me, a fear I remembered all too well. A fear from all those years ago, lying awake at night in the sickening room. The inside of the car had grown much colder, but that was nothing compared to the icy fingers burrowing into my shoulder. I honestly thought I was going to die, that this thing would finally get its way after all of this time. The door handle popped in my panicked grip, and I fell out of the driver's seat onto the pavement. Wait, now I need to restart the music, so hang on. No. Wow. Wow, thanks. Thanks, YouTube. I'm just gonna break there because that totally broke it for me. Hang on. It's not lo-fi jam time. Thanks, YouTube. I appreciate it. What do you guys think so far? My immersion. And then he lived happily ever after he died a cold, painful death at the end. Yeah, we're still in part. This is a very long part. This guy talks a lot, hey? He kind of reminds me of Alan Wake. Remember Alan Wake, if anyone has played, and you're trying to enjoy a game, but he just keeps monologuing and narrating everything he does? Good story, clap. Weird ending. It's not the end, Kraken. I just got interrupted. You hush. God dang it. At least it's not tap dancing spiders, okay? Okay? I will say that I think the writer of the story is just like giving us too many useless details that doesn't need to be known. It's kind of like dragging, but then it gets good again, so it kind of feels like one of those drawn out horror movies, I suppose. Story needs more tap dancing spiders. That was so obnoxious but funny at the same time. Oh my gosh. Can we start again? Oh my gosh. Hi, Uni. I like the description of the cold fingers. What do you mean? That was a good description. Are you being sarcastic? Hi, Uni. How are you? Let's finish the details. The end of part 3. 1 second. We're literally at the very end. The door handle popped in my panicked grip, and I fell out of the driver's seat onto the pavement. For the briefest of moments, I thought I caught a glimpse of something in the back seat. Vague, the form of an old man, yet twisted and distorted, grinning from ear to ear. Luckily, there was no one around, as had there been, I would have appeared a mad fool, but for the car was empty. I grabbed the keys from the ignition and booted the door shut with my foot, locking it for the night. I staggered down the path and into my house. I'm not gonna lie to you, but I drank myself to sleep that night. You may recall that I said I had evidence, actual physical evidence of something unnatural. You might be wondering what the evidence is. Well, I could say it was the marks on my shoulder that made me shudder with fear, or I could tell you that my bedroom window lying prized open this morning by what looked like claw marks has left me dreading tonight, or any other. But no, none of that scared me as much as what I saw today upon waking. Sometimes the most frightening of messages are the most simple. For lying on my chest as I awoke this morning was a toy soldier. The soldier I had hidden in that hollow all those years ago returned to me as an adult, bitten in half. And that was the end of part 3. Now we're at the end of that part. Cue the tap dancing spiders, please. Do you guys want me to leave this for another potentially random secret stream, or do you guys want me to keep going? Yeah, there's a part 4 and a part 5. You know what? I'll leave it up to Kraken and Uni. How about that? Why? What's up, Alexis? How are you? Why? Is it a bad story? Oh. Looks like we're not going to finish the story. Kraken doesn't like it. Also, hi-fi. Thank you so much for providing some blood. I appreciate it. Oh, you're going to sleep. Do you want me to read it next time? It's okay. I was going to do just very short things anyway. No, I won't finish it. We can finish it tomorrow. And Gargoyle, hey, thank you so much. Tier 3. Tier 3. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for that amazing support. That really means the world to me. Thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed your stay here. No, I'm not finishing it without Kraken. Kraken's going to sleep, so I'll read another story, and you guys can come back tomorrow. What, you're gonna fall asleep to my voice? Okay. I don't suck. How about this? I have another story tabbed. Let's read that story to end off everything, and then if you guys come back tomorrow, I'll finish with part 4 and 5. No, I don't suck. Wow, that could really be taken out of context, so let's just pretend I didn't say that. Damn it, Kraken, why do you do this? God damn it. Thank you. Had to have that voice? Guess you just talk quietly. Good night, Kraken. I'll finish the rest of the story next time, and maybe you'll be here. But I'll pop another one on. Have a good sleep, Kraken. Thanks for stopping by. Don't let the tap dancing spiders bite. I hope they won't, because that sucks. I think you sound pretty good. Did you get training? No. This is just what my voice sounds like, but when I read or stream, I try to take deeper breaths and slow my pacing and talk quietly. That's all. Yeah. So I do have another story here, and it'll be the last one for the night. There's one called Here's Why You Shouldn't Ever Record Yourself While Sleeping, which is a little bit long, so I think I'll save that for the next secret stream. But there's also one called Did You Hear the Ice Cream Man Last Night? It's a little long as well, but let's do this one, yeah? You ready? It's a bit slow start, so get snuggled in, put me on in the background. Relax, take it easy. Turn your lights off or dim them. Turn the volume up. I might ruin ice cream for you, potentially. Oh, LJ, well, I'm happy that you're here. And I'm really, really happy that a really good friend of mine is here too. Uni, I hope you have a good day today, and I love you very much. Yeah, it was just a random stream that I decided to turn on. Alright, you guys ready? Did you hear the ice cream man last night? That's what it's called. I love you too. I used to think of hell as a faraway place. For those of you out there who still hold that belief, this piece of my life is for you. Don't ask me why I'm doing this. I'm honestly not sure. My therapist says writing out our traumas can help our brains cope, make things easier to swallow. A system he affectionately refers to as remedy writing. My reasoning could be something as selfish as that. Perhaps I'm also hoping that those of you who read this will heed its warning. Do not make the same mistakes my 10-year-old self did, or maybe it's merely the adage, misery loves company. I grew up in a middle-class suburb in Ventura County, not too far from Los Angeles. Our house was one of many cookie-cutter homes separated by white pickets or chain-link fences. My mom, a soft-spoken, dream-driven woman, worked from home as an editor for a growing magazine. My father spent every day in Simi Valley, where he worked as a cargo loader for trucks. After a day of lifting, managing the forklift, and meeting every physical demand, he'd come home sore and irritable. I remember eagerly staring at the clock, watching it tick, revoltingly slower every time I checked. Then came the magical chime that sounded our freedom. Summer break had started and school finally released us from our desk shackles. I think I missed that most adult childhood. I missed that most about childhood, excuse me. The raw, unfettered excitement I had for things. The sort of overwhelming avidity that kept you awake at night just waiting to look underneath the Christmas tree, just waiting to see your birthday cake, just waiting for a brand new day. We eventually lose it as adults once the day-to-day exhaustion and cynicism set in. With summer came many things that have permanently crystallized in my memories. The smell of backyard barbecues, the giddy laughter of kids running through sprinklers while their parents gossip on their porch, the golden bar of sunset slowly sinking down the street, and of course, how could we forget the ballad of a summer heat wave? The ice cream man's jingle. That was how it all started. It was a warm Wednesday night. An awful gnawing hunger pulled me out of sleep. Unable to ignore it, I slipped out of bed and crept past my parents' bedroom. I was craving something sweet from the kitchen. Larson, thank you so much. Welcome to the community. I was craving something sweet from the kitchen. Settling on the last of our pudding cups, I also poured myself a small glass of milk. It would be enough to shut my stomach up. As I stared back into my room, a faint sound caught my ear. A song, like the one you'd hear drifting out of a music box, was coming from outside. I walked to the window and peered through it. The muffled tune, more specifically, Pop Goes the Weasel, was coming from down the street. An ice cream truck. I'd never seen Mr. Mason out this late before. He was one of the residents of our neighborhood who decided out his who decked out his gray van to sell frozen treats. But he usually started his route at noon. One second, I had to make the text bigger because my old grandma eyes can't handle small text. But he usually started his route at noon, when the sun was at its cruelest. Maybe for the adults, my 10-year-old brain thought. The truck coasted by my house, moving tantalizingly slow with a happy electronic chime. Oh boy. Kurosaki, welcome on in. How are you? We're reading creepy stories. Welcome. And thank you so much for bringing your community in. Why don't we introduce you, shall we? Hi, welcome guys. Well, if you've come for comfy, what did I just say? Comfy, sleepy reading time, you've come to the right place. We just now started a new story about a weird, creepy ice cream truck in the middle of the night, so you haven't missed much. What did you stream? And again, thank you so much. I really appreciate you bringing your community here, and it's nice to meet you. Comfy, comfy, comfy. Comfy time. Is this how I pronounce it? Kuro Usagi. I hope I pronounced that correctly. It's 11 p.m. on a Friday for me. And welcome on in, everyone. Thanks for being here. And no one is late. Don't worry about it. You're here just on time. Kuro. I can say Kuro. It's nice to meet you. Thank you for doing such cozy fun stuff so late at night. I was just doing Pulsar, a spacey game, and Kuro with an ooh woo. Kuro ooh woo. I like that. Again, it's lovely to meet you. A space game sounds cool. Are you going to play Returnal? It's kind of a space game. It's coming out soon. I'm really excited for it. But yeah, today was a very unplanned, secret, undercover stream that I told no one about. And I'm just reading. So come on, turn out the lights and pump up the volume and have a listen. Kuro is a silver mod. Oh, well, again, it's lovely to meet you. Were you the one that made silver a snake? Because that was genius. Enjoy getting work done, uni. It's lovely to see you around. Mwah. And I've just finished that book last night, so please, I'd like to talk about it soon. It left my brain feeling really weird. It was beautiful. Silver showed me, and I didn't really know how to respond. I think she was just like, look, and she sent me the photo, and I was like, what is it? She was like, I'm a snake. So that was a good piece of artwork. I liked it a lot. And for those that need to sleep, have a wonderful sleep. Thank you for being here today, and rest well. Hopefully you don't have too many nightmares. Kumpy stream time. Okay. The truck coasted by my house, moving tantalizingly slow with that happy electronic chime. It wasn't Mr. Mason's van. The truck was a pale green with blue accents on the lower half. On the side of its metal body was a large circle with the print of a cartoonish boy in the center. He had blue skin, big black eyes, and a white, soft serve hairstyle. His pupils were notched to create the illusion of a glare, and his smiling Looney Tune face. One of his white gloved hands held a fudgesicle to his mouth while the other gave a big thumbs up. The tip of the swollen thumb, as well as the fingers and wrist, appeared to be melting, just like ice cream. Written above and below the circle in a sizable whimsical lettering, Pipers, Popsicles, join the fun. The next morning is still such a vivid memory to me. I remember waking up to my father's fist pounding against my door. He was yelling, ordering me to unlock it. I pulled the bed sheets over my head and curled into a ball. Even now, I can still feel that sharp tinge of anxiety just thinking about it. Then from behind the door frame, a countdown started from 3. You never wanted him to reach 0. God help you if that man ever reached 0. When I opened the door, he snatched my arm and pulled me into the kitchen. My bare feet dragged pitifully across the floor. The white milk jug was sitting on the corner, its cap still missing. Mom was sitting at the table, her neck deliberately facing the window. Not a good sign. Did you leave this out? He asked with a sullen voice. When I didn't give an immediate answer, he twisted my arm. A hot ring of pain coiled around the area. Yes, I cried out. I'm sorry, I left it out. I'm sorry. Great. His voice rose and crackled. Now we need more milk. What a fucking waste. With one of his hands still clasped around my arm, he reached for the milk jug. with the other and dumped it over my head. My mom gasped loudly in her seat and the trademark reaction. He left for work after that. Evidently, I made him late. It wasn't the first of my father's outbursts, and it was far from the last. The bastard was always looking for a punching bag. And when my mother didn't fit the role, I was runner-up. Every day in that house was like maneuvering around tripwires. Eventually, you trigger him. My mom scooped me off the floor and took me to the bathroom so I could wash the milk out of my hair. She left a bundle of clean clothes on my bed. That was her time to react. The moment our front door slammed shut and his car left the driveway. Until then, her neck was twisted anywhere else with that same disconnected, faraway look. When I came back into the kitchen, she was making eggs for breakfast. "What kept you up last night?" she quietly asked me. "I was hungry. I was going to put everything back, but the ice cream man, the truck distracted me." She looked at me quizzically. The blistering hot oil popping in the pan. "What do you mean? He was driving around the neighborhood last night. Didn't you hear his music?" She scrunched her forehead and shook her head. "Mr. Mason wouldn't be driving around that late. There wouldn't be any point to it. All I would get is no customers and noise complaints. The sweets you ate before bed probably made you dream about it. If only that were the case." That night, my stomach once again woke me. The hunger pangs had come back, much worse this time. As much as I tossed and turned, trying my best to ignore it, but it was impossible. I sighed and pulled myself out of bed, once again tiptoeing past my parents' bedroom. The kitchen had nothing for me, not even milk now. My mom still hadn't been to the store that week, leaving our pantry mostly vacant. Save for larger meals, I wanted something sweet. Then it came again. The melodious music from outside. The ice cream truck was driving its late night route again. Another sharp twinge stabbed at my stomach. The thought of ice cream at that moment was captivating. If the driver were following the same pattern as last night, he'd pass by right here, right? The idea teased me. I weighed my options. The piggy bank in my room had at least $2 or $3 of change in its gut. I could run out, pay him, grab the ice cream, and run back with my folks, none the wiser. But if my father noticed, dear God, if he saw, I'd have a lot more than hunger pains to fall asleep to. I stood there and pondered. Eventually, hunger won the debate. I went to my room and opened up my piggy bank. The mechanical jingle was getting closer. It was nearly passing the yard. I put on my shoes and wrapped a jacket over my pajamas. Carefully, I unlocked the front door, praying that the click wouldn't be too loud. I discreetly pulled it open, just enough for my small self to slip through. Luckily, not enough for the hinges to creak. I ran across the grass and down the driveway in my sneakers. There it was, steering slowly towards me. The song churning out of the speakers situated at its top sounded similar to "It's a Small World." It pulled up and stopped near me. The cartoon caricature with the bright blue skin, presumably named Piper, smiled down at me. Behind the hum of its engine, I heard something suddenly clink inside of the truck. The music stopped, and someone hoisted open the vendor window. I tried to look inside, but there wasn't a single light or bulb to light up the interior. It was just a metal box of darkness. "Hello?" I called out. "Hey, little guy." The cheery voice that answered was soft and mellow. Definitely not Mr. Mason's smoker rasp. "What can I get for you?" I shuffled the quarters in my palm. "Can I have a bomb pop?" "You sure can," the chipper voice answered. Inside the shadows, there were vague signs of movement and quiet humming. The sweet smelling aromas of hot fudge mixed with the other milky flavors created an amalgam of smells that made my stomach growl. A white-gloved hand melted out of the blackness. Tweezed between its index finger and thumb was my popsicle, still in its wrapper. I took it and held my handful of quarters out of the serving window. "Oh, no, no, no," the man said. "Not necessary. This one's on me. Free of charge." I smiled and pocketed the coins. "Thank you." I beamed and cocked my head to the side. "Can you see anything in there?" "I see everything," the voice chortled. "We're your friends." I scuffed the curb with one of my souls. "They're probably all asleep. Everyone is. Why do you drive around so late?" "Well, I was born sick, you see. The type of sick that makes me sensitive to the sun. Even the slightest bit touches me, I'd whistle. I'd whiz, and then whoop, like a firework." We both laughed at that. From within the lightness interior, I could make out a vague face with perked, smiling cheeks. "Would you like another popsicle?" he asked. I itched the back of my neck. I should go now. If my dad sees me out here, I'll get in trouble." "Oh!" He sounded disappointed. "Well, we wouldn't want that. Drop by again, okay? Bring some friends next time." I will." I smiled and waved as I carried my free popsicle back to the house. The door quietly closed behind me. My parents didn't hear a thing. On my way back to my room, I peered out the window. The ice cream truck was still out there, sitting motionless in front of my house. Finally, the wheels started turning and the music began a new chorus of Home on the Range. I ate the tricolor popsicle in my room. The flavor that tingled over my tongue was like nothing I had ever experienced. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that words will not do it justice, but I'll do my best. It was a beautiful mixture of cherry, lime, raspberry, and something else. Something different. It was like a literal rocket had propelled itself through my system and left a sputtering trail of joy. Each bite only brought me to higher atmosphere. It was fantastic, enjoyable, and worst of all, unnatural. I slept like a baby that night with a more than satisfied stomach. The next day, I biked around our neighborhood with a few other kids. We had chosen a miserably hot day for it and quickly regretted the decision. Luckily, we found a large tree and sat with our bikes in its cool shadow. Have you guys heard it too? The ice cream truck? At night? I asked everyone. They shook their heads, trading off skeptical looks at me. Except for one boy. Matthew. He was pudgy, wore a pair of square lens glasses that complemented his round face, and had cheeks splattered with freckles. We weren't close friends, but mostly knew each other from school. I have seen it parked right outside my house, was his tepid response. The guy waved at me from the window. I thought it would wake my mom up, but she slept like a boulder. Before I could answer him, it was as though the devil himself had heard our chatter and we heard the music. Mr. Mason's ice cream van rounded the corner, blasting the first few bars of its tiny melody. That was just what we needed right now, the perfect solution for a brutal summer day. Ever since the bomb pop from last night, I've been craving another. My thoughts kept returning to it, the lingering flavors still flickering in my mouth. I was almost drooling. I wanted more. Mr. Mason quickly spotted us and pulled up with a smile. He spoke in a grizzled, unique voice, which I now realized was a thick Turkish accent. I handed him the change in my pocket and waited for the wondrous rocket-shaped popsicle. The moment I grasped it, I immediately tore the wrapper off and sunk my teeth into it. Then, just as quickly, I stopped and I gagged. It was bitter. Like I had just taken a bite out of frozen wax. The taste covered my tongue and clawed the back of my throat. I let each of my friends have a lick except for Matthew, who immediately declined. They all said it tasted normal, not sharp or waxy at all. My friend who had asked for the same thing even let me try his. It was horrible. Absolutely horrible. None of them could taste it. The disgusting flavor. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling and shaking. The pulsing red numbers next to my bed read 2 in the morning. My eyes were red and swollen from hours of crying. Pain lanced the purple pear-shaped bruise on my leg, a reminder, courtesy of my father, that after a grueling day of work, he did not deserve to come home to a bike left in the driveway. It would, unfortunately, be another 9 years of this before the untreated blood clot in his leg would take his life. A few days before the accident, I had told him to go fuck himself. But my father wasn't the reason I couldn't stop shaking. It was the cravings. The throbbing spasms of hunger had been haunting me for the past few nights. They were back with a twisting vengeance worse than ever. After Mr. Mason had given me the popsicle, I'd spent the rest of the day trying to get rid of that vile taste. Nothing was working. In fact, every sweet thing I had tried tasted just as bad. Even my favorite juice was developing a sharp, greasy aftertaste. I bit deeply into my knuckles, a nervous habit I'd acquired over the years, which has now left a row of callous depressions there. I needed something sweet. I would have killed for something sweet. Then it returned. The music outside my window. Just down the street, the late-night ice cream truck was making its rounds. That was it. That was the answer to my prayers. Without thinking, I sprang out of bed and grabbed my jacket and sneakers. Slipping out of the house was just as easy as the first time. Mostly fueled by hunger, I ran to meet the truck halfway. It rolled to a stop, clearly spotting me. Not that I was hard to miss. Of course, I ran next to its minty green body and patiently waited, but nothing happened. "Hey, kiddo," the voice said through the open passenger window. "Sorry about that. My hatch is stuck and won't open. What can I get for you?" Another bomb pop, please?" I asked pitifully. Hiding the pleading whine in my voice was impossible. "Not a problem. Let's have a look-see." I could hear him rummaging around, muttering incoherently to himself. He returned, sounding less than cheerful. "Well, that's not good." My heart sank like an anchor. "What isn't?" "It looks like I'm out of those for the night. Dang, what bad luck." A painful throb racked my stomach, making me wince. Something else?" I begged. "Can I have something else?" He rummaged around more and sighed heavily. "I'm sorry to say, but it looks like we have nothing left." Tears rushed to my eyes. Hopelessness bubbled up inside me. My solution, the one sure thing I needed to get rid of these cravings, was gone. I'd have to wait until tomorrow night. I started the miserable walk home, back to the bed I knew I wouldn't be able to fall asleep in. My sneakers dragged along the asphalt. "Hang on a tad," the voice said. "Looks like I have one more left. Just for you." I whipped back around and raced to the passenger window. "Really?" I said, wiping down the trails of tears from my face. A chorus of alarmed voices called out to my brain. "Not safe. This is a stranger. Go home. Not safe." Of course there were red flags, obvious ones, but I wasn't thinking clearly. My logic had whittled away. All that mattered was the craving, the unusual desire for that exquisite taste. It possessed me. I knew there were risks, but my fatigued boyish mind was done compromising. I pulled the green metal door open. The cabin was expectantly as dark as its backside, and a visible coldness permeated the air, about as cold as you'd presume an ice cream truck to be. The tart, dancing smells of chocolate, strawberry, bubblegum, and other flavors graced my nose. A single graded step led inside. I spied a vague silhouette sitting at the driver's seat with my bomb pop in hand. From atop his dashboard, the bobblehead of a gray cat jiggled its head. "Go on. It's all yours," he said pleasantly. I leaned inside the truck, planting one foot over the metallic step, while the other remained on the pavement. The dim outline of the driver held out the popsicle just inches from my fingers. "Come on," he said again. "Don't you want it?" Just as my fingertip grazed the foil casting, I heard something. Something that without a doubt saved my life that night. A strained voice squeaked out of the truck's insides. "Help me." The hand holding the popsicle lunged at me, seizing my arm as I tried to pull back, grabbing a handful of sleeve instead of skin. I gasped, too shocked to muster a scream, and jerked backwards. But his grip was relentless. The darkness around us dispersed, and in an instant I could see everything like some veil had lifted. A nauseating texture coated the ceiling. Rust, perhaps. It crawled the inner walls in a reddish-brown crust. There were scuff marks on the stained floor. A foul, edgy smell thickened the air. Every window was impossible to see through, smeared with grime and networking cracks. But the worst of all, the crux of my persistent nightmares even now was the thing in the driver's seat. A naked, bluish body mottled with dark rashes and boils. Folds of excess skin sagged off its bloated frame almost like it was melting. One of its long, double-jointed arms was pulling at my sleeve. The loose flesh that hung off of it wobbled and jiggled like sacks of trapped liquid. And then its face, the horrible, horrible face, was creased with a clownish smile. Its gums were gray and infected, with bent teeth jutting out of them. It looked bold at first glance, but a few straggly white hairs spouted from its swollen blue scalp. One of its eyes, a pitch black sphere, was rooted in its cheek, like it had slid down from the socket. The only thing remotely human about the thing was the way it sat in the driver's seat. One ugly hand on the steering wheel and the other still trying to pull me closer. A guttural voice spat out of its mouth at a sickeningly cheery octave. "Don't you want it, little guy?" I screamed and didn't stop screaming. The sanity drained out of me in fat, seeping tears. My vision was wet, blurry haze of horror, and internal voices screamed for me to run. Suddenly, something was ripping. I flung myself back to the asphalt. My sleeve was now a bloodless gash of torn fabric. The nude humanoid thing was exerting a strange, huffing, gurgling sound. Maybe laughter, I don't care to know for sure. The outside of the truck was even worse than the inside. eating away at the pale green paint was a thick film of black matter. It covered the car in a black, muddy ooze, smothering the cartoonish boy and his broad smile. Welcome. Is that the Nemmer comedy? Welcome on in, everybody. How are you doing today? The lovely Sir Nemmer-sama has graced us with his presence. He just finished playing Subnautica. How was it? Hello. Autobots. What was it? Rise up. 'Cause we're going to go through the stars and you are going to fight. Assemble. There we go. Was that correct? Roll out. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. Hi everyone. Welcome on in. How are you? I guess while we're here, for those that have my volume turned up, please be aware I'm about to turn on a really loud song for Nemmer-sama. Welcome on in, everybody. Autobots, roll out. There's more to you than meets the eye. Hi, how is your stream? Thank you so much for rating the channel. I appreciate that, Nemmer. Thank you. Oh, Jupiter, of course. Welcome back. Actually, I don't think Troy even knows I'm streaming. This was a complete surprise. I was working all day and I was like, you know what? I think I'll come on to the stream and I'll just read some stories for a little bit. And now I'm here. Did you enjoy Subnautica? Tell us all about it. And if you guys don't know Nemmer Comedy, well, you damn well should. If you've come from any of the previous raids, I'm going to tell you something really important and you need to listen, and I mean every word I'm about to say. I've recently been introduced to Nemmer Comedy and he has been nothing but an absolute gem. And not even just for the fact that he's a really, really good person and he's really kind and sweet and supportive. The production quality of his stream is so out of this world, and the love he puts into each individual in his stream is absolutely outstanding. So if you want to have a really good time and get the warm fuzzies and enjoy just a laugh, please go check out Nemmer Comedy, and I mean that with all of my heart. Oh my god, Nemmer, please. Thank you for that. I appreciate the support, man. You did not have to do that at all. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Please, please go support Nemmer Comedy. I absolutely love watching his streams no matter what he's playing. You're ridiculous. I think we're just trying to get to your level. Thank you again, guys. I really appreciate that. Welcome on in. You guys have come in pretty much near the end of the story, but I'll catch you up. You guys okay with that? We were reading a story about this little boy who had started to hear the sounds of the ice cream truck song in the middle of the night. And he had, of course, gotten an ice cream from this ice cream truck, and he started to get these really insane cravings, hungers. And the next day, everything seemed to taste bad. He wanted something sweet, but everything was tasting disgusting. So the next night he went to go get another ice cream from this guy in the middle of the night. And it turns out he's some weird, disgusting, blue, horrid creature. And that's where we're on right now. He's just seen and unveiled what this thing is that's been giving him ice cream in the middle of the night. Some weird ice cream monster man. Yeah. So if you, oh yes, maybe I should do that. If you have come from, you said to call me Kuro is what you wanted me to call you, and Uwu, Kuro. I don't know if you're still here, but I think that's what you said. And Nemmer Comedy. My name's Layna Lazar. I'm a VTuber, and this is my channel, aka The Witching Hour. And here on The Witching Hour, we focus on horror content, and that's anywhere from playing horror games from AAA to indie, reading stories, watching horror shorts, and sometimes I even 3D sculpt on my stream. Even though it's not horror, that's just kind of the side things that we do. So it's very horror central on this channel. So welcome on in, and I'm really happy to see you and happy to have you. Welcome. Nemmer is very exciting to listen to, but when you come over here, it's almost like I prepare you for sleep and you fall asleep. And I'm okay with that. So welcome. So get comfy, turn off the lights, and turn up the volume. And get ready for the rest of the story. Again, if you're not following Nemmer, then maybe you'll have nightmares tonight, and I don't think that you want that, do you? So might as well just go click that link and give him a follow, please. Because he's fantastic. Oh, you can turn off the sun, trust me, it's easy. I'm going to be doing more sculpting streams simultaneous, so I hope maybe one day you can catch it, and I'll be streaming earlier, so don't worry. And Nemmer, I hope you have a wonderful sleep when you get around to it. And Tally Ho, thank you so much for the gifted sub. I appreciate that very much. Yeah, back to the story. Yes, more sculpting streams. Trust me, I've got a big amount of things scheduled for you guys when I come back. Oh, and I'm very excited for the Returnal. I just bought it today, so I'm ready. Day one, when it comes out, the second that I have it in my hands, those are going to be the longest streams we'll ever experience because I am so ready for that game. And you know it's right after the Returnal, or just Returnal? Resident Evil 8. So my body is ready. It's going to be amazing. Yes. Yes, it's a Returnal type, almost mixed with like Castlevania, Metroidvania type game. It looks phenomenal. Fantastic, mixed with a little bit of PT vibes. I'm really excited. And if you guys are going to sleep, farewell and have a good sleep, and thank you for being here today. Hi Jonan, how are you? We're just about to read the end of the story. Alright, let's get to it, shall we? And welcome everyone who has followed and subbed and gifted subs. Thank you so much for your support. I appreciate it very much. Now, time to get comfy and close your eyes. I'm going to start back from a paragraph before so people can catch up. The outside of the truck was even worse than the inside. Eating away at the pale green paint was a thick film of black matter. It covered the car in a black muddy ooze, smothering the cartoonish boy and his broad smile. A few letters did show through though. Join the fun. Parts of the grimy substance were moving, throbbing maybe, as though they had some sort of pulse. The speakers atop its mucky body, although caked in the stuff, were still spewing out sound. It wasn't music. not in any way that the human mind could understand. A hollow, high-pitched frequency with a gravely white noise hiss. Behind the corrupted pitch was something else. Something almost sounding like it was trying to escape from it. Choppy, inaudible screaming. Hell, I was hearing hell. With the last burst of adrenaline my system had to offer, I twisted around and tore through the yard to reach my house. I flung the door open, slammed it shut, and slid down to the floor. I buried my head in the crevice of my knees, drenched in snot and tears. I sat there walling for some time, waiting for my father's footsteps to come pounding out of his room. But it never happened. Both of my parents were still in bed. I tried to wake my mother up out of pure desperation, my father too, but neither so much as stirred. The gritty white noise was still screaming from the street. I hid beneath my sheets and covered my ears, trying everything I could to expel it from my head. "Help me," the distressed voice had said from the back of the truck. The voice that saved my life? Finally, after minutes of grueling torture, the truck revved its engine and cruised down the street. The house became silent, save for my sleepless crying. A child did go missing that night. Matthew, the boy with freckled cheeks and square lenses. I will not be giving out his last name for respect of the family. His parents had woken up to his empty room and their front door left ajar. They called the police and filed a missing persons report, and the community was notified about the disappearance. I remember seeing a few police cruisers lined outside of Mr. Mason's house, probably because the boy's mother heard him spout off about an ice cream truck coming in the dead of night. They found no evidence against him, but the gray ice cream van didn't leave his garage for the rest of the summer, or any summer after that. To this day, I can still feel those bitter flavors in my mouth, sitting on my tongue like a pool of chemicals. At first, it only affected sweet things, then salty things, and slowly worked its way up to everything. No matter what I eat, no matter what I drink, my stomach attempts to force it out of my body due to its acid waxiness. I take no pleasure in food. I eat only to not die. I can't remember the last time I enjoyed something as simple as taste. Every night, a new wave of impulses come back, prying at the last cardboard walls of my sanity. I cram my knuckles into my teeth to trap the screams inside. I beg the dark for nothingness of my room for something sweet. That's how it draws you out. Hunger. When the happy, inviting music gets in your head, it fills you with cravings masquerading as hunger. Don't bother trying to wake your parents. It won't work. Not while that truck is in your neighborhood. Then you take the bait, the incredible flavor from your dreams. A taste so perfect, you'd kill for a sliver of it again. But when you go back, begging for just one more, it takes you. So I implore you, whether or not you decide to believe me after reading this, at least give it some thought. If you're ever stirred awake in the dead of night and an ice cream truck jingle drifts in from the window, go back to sleep. For the love of God, go back to sleep. The end. That was a good story, I think. What did you guys think? And for you guys just coming in or tuning in, oftentimes we'll read creepypastas here. So that was a creepypasta. Mm. Oh, I'm glad you guys liked it. Oh, thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. I really like reading. Thank you so much, guys, for gifting subs. I appreciate that so much. Thank you. No, I did not write that at all. None of these. I can't write well whatsoever. I just really like reading scary stories. If I can find one short one, I'll read another. What do you guys think? No, I've never written any before. I'm not very good at writing, I don't think. You're a spooked British boy at 1 in the afternoon. Oh my goodness. One more for the night? One more? Okay. Let me go find one more. Alright, I've got kind of a long one. Are you guys ready and willing to listen to a kind of long story? One more? What do you think? Of course, Matt. That's what I'm here for. Alright. Let's get one more spooky story to end your night. Okay. Let's do this. Now, if the music is too low or too loud, please be sure to tell me. If you have to go, don't worry. Have a wonderful rest of your evening and sleep and day. And thank you guys for being here. This one is called Here's Why You Should Never Record Yourself While Sleeping. Get comfortable, turn up the volume, and relax. I'm a chronic sleep talker. Always have been. Everyone who's ever slept in the same house as me will tell you that. My parents, siblings, friends, and especially my exes. They're the ones who got an earful. It was something we laugh about in the morning because most of what I'd say would be incoherent or nonsensical. Some of my famous lines included, "There's too many helicopters in the pool," and "My balloon's on the wrong foot." It never bothered anyone around me. My friends and family pretty much got a kick out of it. One day at work, the subject of sleeping came up. My coworkers threw stories back and forth about some of their weirdest dreams. I chimed in with my sleep-talking antics. Everyone laughed, and I rattled off some of the crazier shit I've said while zonked. One of my coworkers, Bill, really busted a gut. After he finished hyperventilating, he told me that I should set up a voice recorder while I sleep so I can play it back at work every morning. Honestly, I didn't think it was a bad idea. That night, I downloaded a decent voice recording app on my phone and placed it in my nightstand before I went to bed. Being single and living alone, I had no way of knowing what I said in my sleep anymore, so I was looking forward to hearing what I would pick up. It would be a humorous way to start my otherwise dull mornings. For 2 months, I recorded a lot of great stuff. One night in particular, I kept screaming almost as if I was running from something in my dream, but after a few minutes, I said, "Bad fridge." I couldn't stop laughing at that one. Neither could my coworkers when I showed them. Eventually, the app picked up something unsettling. Listening to the audio for any trace of funny banter I might find, I heard a loud bang. It sounded like a door being slammed shut with great force. Hearing that, my heart sank. I wondered if an intruder had made their way into my home. My house is a small cottage on the outskirts of town. I was able to get it at a great price due to its location and age. As such, some of its components are antiquated. I knew after hearing the recording that the only two doors sturdy enough to make that loud of a thud were that of the attic and the basement. Basements and attics have always freaked me out. Never liked to go near them as a kid, and I still don't as an adult. They kind of terrify me. The ones in my house even more so. Something about them being old made them all the more sinister. Despite my fear, I had to make sure no one was in the house. I got up out of bed and headed straight for the basement, as that was the door closest to my bedroom. I hesitantly opened the door and descended into my home's depths. I was nervous, but I was desperate for some peace of mind. The basement was empty. I quickly ran back up the first floor and proceeded to journey upstairs. Once I reached the attic door, I froze. As much as basements make my skin crawl, I find attics to be far worse. Maybe it was because they were always a big unknown to me. I had only ever been in an attic once my whole life, and that was to help my dad unload some Christmas decorations. Even then, I was spooked. Because of my phobia, I installed a deadbolt on the door when I moved in. It sounds foolish, but hey, it helps me sleep at night. Looking at the door, I noticed that the deadbolt was still locked. An intruder could have gone in and then relocked on their way out, but at least I knew they weren't in there anymore. This was my excuse not to go inside. I went back downstairs and put the noise out of my mind. Forgetting all about the loud bang, I continued to record at night in the hopes of catching more sleep talking. I did, but it wasn't out of the hilarious, absurd variety. The night after I recorded the noise, the only thing I said the whole night was, "Where are you?" I didn't pay it any mind, as I've had similar things in my sleep before. It wasn't until I heard the following night's recording that I became alarmed. I said the same thing. "Where are you?" Only this time it was followed by a strange, static sound. It was odd, but I chalked it up to the coincidence and a phone malfunction. I quickly discovered that neither of these things were to blame. Every night after, I almost said the same thing. I would ask, "Where are you?" And then I'd get some sort of static interference. I couldn't explain it, and it left me rather frazzled. I showed my coworkers, but they weren't able to offer me any insight. I thought about not recording anymore, but not knowing would make me more uneasy. I wanted to get to the bottom of what was going on. And then, one night, I caught something different. Listening to the audio intently, I heard two distinct things. During a 2-minute stretch in the recording, there were footsteps in the background, almost as if someone was pacing. It was very faint, but it was most certainly there. The second thing I heard was me asking the same question. "Where are you?" Only this time I received a response. It was a low whisper, but I could make out what it said. "I'm upstairs." Deeply unnerved by my findings, I set up the app again the next night. I also took the liberty of setting up 2 digital cameras, one in my room and one facing the attic door. After adjusting the light settings on each, I felt confident in my approach. I didn't have time to deal with this bullshit, so I wanted nothing more than to get it sorted out somehow. Unfortunately for me, it wasn't that simple. I slept through the night like normal, but I did have a weird dream. In my dream, I was at home. I was sitting on my couch watching TV when I heard a scratching sound coming from upstairs. Naturally, I assumed it was mice, but as I sat there, the noise grew louder and louder. It eventually morphed into a horrendous knocking sound. That's when I got up to investigate. I made my way up to the attic door and the noises ceased. I stood there for a moment, expecting it to start up again. But it didn't. Complete silence for what felt like a few minutes. Then, without warning, a loud clicking sound broke the tension. The deadbolt had unlocked itself, and that's when I woke up to the sound of my alarm going off. I immediately got up and gathered the cameras as well as my phone. I was eager to see if they'd captured anything. They did, but it only left me with more questions. Halfway through the audio on both my phone and the camera in my room, I heard once again, "Where are you?" There was no response and no static, but there was a loud bang. Just like the one I'd caught before, only more distinct. It was most certainly a door being slammed shut. I quickly grabbed the second camera and began looking through the footage. The attic door never opened. Instead, I heard the bang in the background ever so faintly. Given the volume in each of the clips, it seemed as though it might have been the basement door. After skimming through the rest of the footage and finding nothing else out of the ordinary, I decided to check the basement again. With a mixture of nerves and adrenaline, I ran over to the basement and swung the door open. I hurried downstairs and turned the light on. I was fed up and a little annoyed, thinking someone was somehow having a laugh at my expense. However, when the room lit up, I was greeted with the familiar sight of an unfurnished basement. It was completely empty. No intruder and no answers. Frustrated, I went off to work and tried to keep my mind off my odd dilemma. That proved to be a difficult task. I kept playing out different scenarios in my head during the workday, but nothing made sense. The only logical, though somewhat illogical explanation that I could come up with was that I was being harassed by a spirit. I didn't want to give in to that notion, but I was running out of ideas. I tried to talk with my coworkers again, in the hopes that they would tell me it was nothing to worry about. Instead, I received the opposite. One of my coworkers told me to call the cops and have them look through the house for signs of a break-in. Another told me I should stay at a friend's house. Bill told me to abandon the house and run for the hills. He was only joking, but it didn't make me feel any better about the matter. Things took a turn for the bizarre when I arrived home that day. Opening the front door to the cottage, I stepped in and set my jacket down on the couch. I then plopped down in an attempt to unwind. Immediately after sitting, I heard the bang again. It was clear as day. It was the same sound from the audio and footage, but this time I was hearing it in person. I jumped up and looked straight ahead at the basement door. You could see it from the couch. It had been in line of sight the entire time. Though I hadn't been looking directly at it, I was fairly certain it hadn't moved. Still, the bang definitely came from that direction. Spooked but curious, I decided to check it out. I walked over cautiously and examined the door. There was no indication that it had been slammed shut. The wood around the door was pristine, and the wood below it had not been scraped. I opened it and trotted down the old creaky stairs to investigate the basement for a third time. After reaching the bottom, I turned the light on. I expected to see nothing, just as I had before. While scanning the room left to right, nothing is mostly what I saw. After doing a double take, however, I realized that something was amiss. Off in the center of the far wall was a door. This sent a chill up my spine. My basement had no doors. That I was sure of. I knew this before purchasing the place almost a year ago. when I first took that grand tour, I also didn't see a door. Not that morning and not the other day. It didn't make a lick of sense. I walked towards it, bewildered. I wasn't sure of the door's origins, but I knew that it had to be the cause of the sounds that I had been hearing. There was no other explanation. As I approached the impossibility before me, I realized something that made my skin crawl. I recognized the wood, the design, and the deadbolt. It was the attic door. I didn't want to open it, for fear of what might be lurking behind. Instead, I ran upstairs and checked to see if the attic door was still there, the actual one. It was indeed. I ran down back the stairs into the basement only to find the door there had vanished. Had I merely imagined its presence? Thinking I had gone completely mad, I went back upstairs and sat down on the couch. My mind was running haywire, trying to comprehend things, but it eventually gave in. It eventually gave in to its own weariness. I ended up taking a short nap, and that's when I had another weird dream. This dream was similar to the one I had before. I was sitting on the couch, watching TV, when I heard a scratching noise. The only difference was it was coming from the basement, rather than the attic. It too progressed and turned into a voracious knocking that I couldn't ignore. As such, I got up from the couch and went downstairs to put a stop to it. In my dream, the basement was empty. No mysterious door in sight. That and the knocking and scratching ceased upon my entrance. At my wit's end, I went back upstairs. The sound then returned with a vengeance, only this time it was coming from the attic again. I ran up there as fast as I could, but the noise stopped. I waited. Following the narrative of my previous dream, the deadbolt clicked, signaling that the door had unlocked itself. Unlike my previous dream, however, the door opened up a bit and a hand reached out from within. That's when I woke up. I wrote the first dream off as a byproduct of an overstressed mind, but to have it reoccur? That wasn't ordinary. At least not for me. Between the door in my basement and my strange nightmares, I was a mess. Both perplexed and frightened, I called my friend John. John's an eccentric fellow. He's kind of a guy who believes in UFOs, ghosts, conspiracy theories, the occult, and other things of that nature. Not only does he believe in them, but he studies them. He knows more about Roswell than I do about myself. Being a skeptic, I always thought the massive amount of information he retained was borderline useless. I changed my mind about that after seeing my attic door pop up in my basement. If anyone could help, or at least steer me in the right direction, it was him. I spoke with John for a couple of hours. He was ecstatic after hearing about my experience. He began rattling off all different things he thought it might indicate. Some of his theories included wormhole, a gateway to the other side, and even a glitch. One of many theories that he subscribes to is that this world we live in is a simulation. He told me that he couldn't be completely certain about what it was without seeing it for himself. Unfortunately, he lives too far away to just stop by and visit. Instead of leaving me empty-handed, John gave me some advice on what to do next. After telling him about the voice I captured and the dreams I had been having, he started leaning towards the ghost idea. He thought it might be trying to communicate with me. Because of this, he told me I should set up the voice recorder in the basement and ask the spirit some questions. I could play back the recording after and listen to the voice. John said that I should do it in the attic as well. Though weary of his methods, I told him I would try it out. After all, I couldn't just sit around and expect the situation to resolve itself. I didn't like the idea of going up into the attic by myself, but I needed to do something. After getting off the phone, I immediately put his plan into action. The basement would have to be first, as I was still apprehensive about going upstairs. I set up the app and put my phone on the basement floor. I proceeded to ask questions, leaving enough space in between for someone or something to answer. I asked normal things like its name, its age, and what it wanted. After roughly 5 minutes of interrogation, I stopped the recording and I played it back. I must have listened to my own voice a million times, hoping for anything audible to present itself. To my dismay, I caught nothing of the sort. It seemed as though the attic would indeed have to be my next venture. I reluctantly climbed the stairs up to the attic door. I looked at it for a few moments, took a deep breath, and unlocked the deadbolt. I opened the door and braced myself. There was nothing there, save for the previous owner's belongings. When I first purchased the house, I had to do a little bit of renovating, so to speak. The owner before me had no cable, electricity, or proper plumbing. On top of that, they left all of their stuff behind. I had most of it removed, but left everything that was in the attic. I had no need for the space, and I didn't want to put any more money into emptying the house than I had to. I pursued through the attic's wares for a bit, curious as to what it was that I technically owned. Some of the interesting items that stood out to me were an old postcard from Paris, a strange-looking dog collar, and a book on witchcraft. The fear set in while going through the contents of my new collection. The angled ceiling, antiques, and large window overlooking my yard did give me the place a dose of charm, but I still didn't like attics. I quickly hit the record button on the app and set my phone on the floor. I asked the same questions as before, but didn't leave as much space in between as I really wanted to get the hell out of there. Before stopping the recording, I had a thought. Perhaps the spirit would respond if I asked the same question that I did in my sleep. I cleared my throat and I asked, "Where are you?" After asking the final question, I stopped the recording and played it back. It sounded almost identical to the one I'd recorded in the basement, complete with the lack of answers, that is, until the very end. I asked the last question, and then I heard a familiar low whisper. "Behind you." After hearing this reply, I immediately turned around. There was nothing there. Despite this, I hightailed it downstairs. That eerie voice reinforced my phobia of attics and instilled in me an indescribable dread. I could no longer bear to be in that house by myself. I called John again and begged him to help me out. I told him I'd give him the gas money for the 8-hour road trip. He was reluctant at first, knowing that he'd have to spend the night and call out from work the next morning. Curiosity got the best of him in the end. After much deliberation, he agreed to come over. I waited for John in my car. While sitting there, I couldn't help but examine my house. I began asking myself questions like, is it really haunted? Do ghosts really exist? And my favorite, is this what my life has come to? The questions were speculative and rhetorical. I pretty much knew the answers. As I gazed towards the house in disappointment, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. It was a silhouette, standing at the attic window. Holy shit, what the fuck? What the fuck do I do? It was the only retorts that crossed my mind after seeing the shadowy figure. After a few moments of staring, the figure stepped back from the window, completely out of sight. I sat and pondered about it for a few minutes after its departure. In a moment of bravery, I chose to go back in the house and up to the attic. Crazy, I know, but it's my house. I needed to show this thing that I wasn't interested in playing its games. Even if I was scared shitless. Besides, John would have my head if I didn't fall the damn thing. Feeling confident, but still shaky, I ventured up into the attic. I swung the door open without hesitation and waltzed in like I owned the place. After all I did, the attic was void of any ghostly figures, but it didn't harbor the faint scent of candle wax. Unsure of how to proceed, I started talking in a loud and firm tone. "This isn't your house. I'm tired of your bullshit game, Spirit. I demand you to leave at once. I knew this wasn't going to work, but it was almost cathartic. I felt a hell of a lot better fighting back. I walked around the attic, satisfied with my rant, thinking that I had actually conquered my fear. My smug demeanor wouldn't last more than a few moments. Soon after I spoke, a gust of wind blew through the attic and hit me like a bus. Nearly knocked me over. I knew it was the ghost doing. I tried to stand my ground, but I was pretty damn frightened. I watched as everything around me flew about, creating a tornado of mementos and keepsakes. I was about to retreat when I noticed something that hadn't budged an inch. It was the book on witchcraft that I'd seen before. Upon noticing it, the wind inexplicably stopped and everything fell to the floor. I walked over to the book, curious as to why it had remained stationary. And as I did, it opened up on its own. It was startling, but I somehow sensed no malice. I was coming around to the fact that ghosts might be really trying to communicate with me. The page the book landed on was a spell. The whole thing was in Latin, but from what I could make out, it had something to do with growing plants. Confused, I reached out to the ghost for help. What do you want me to do? After asking the question, the attic door slammed shut. I thought for a moment and gathered that it wanted me to recite the spell in the attic. I was still confused, but somehow calm. It felt as though I was helping the spirit in some way. Before I could read from the book, my phone went off. It was a text from John. So sorry. I can't make it out there. My boss won't give me the day off tomorrow, and I'm sure my car will make it there and back. And I'm not sure my car will make it there and back. It desperately needs new tires, and I won't be able to buy those until Friday. Give me a call back, and then I'll see what I can do. Good luck. Fuck. Even though I wasn't freaking out anymore, it was nice knowing that someone's on their way to my house just in case things went sour. I didn't like it, but I was on my own. I accepted this and turned my attention back to the book. It was time to deliver the spell. I cleared my throat and began reciting the text in the book. I took Latin in college, and although I didn't retain all the information, I knew enough to make the proper pronunciations. Even still, I stumbled over my words during certain parts. Because of this, I had to restart a couple of times. I wanted to get it right, especially if it was truly what the ghost wanted. After finishing the spell flawlessly, for the most part, the attic door opened. I walked out with the book in hand, wondering if everything was over. When I reached the bottom step and turned around the corner, it became quickly apparent that it wasn't. The basement door was wide open. I was in uncharted territory, taking orders from a ghost, but I hoped I was following along all right. Seeing the basement door ajar convinced me that I was probably needed to recite the spell down there as well. I still wasn't sure why, but it felt like this was the spirit's will. As such, I was obliged. I walked down into the basement with the book and turned the light on. A quick glance around revealed that I was alone and there was no door. I cleared my throat once again and began reciting the spell, word for word. Honestly, I was a little excited. It felt like I was doing something productive about my ghost problem and that it might actually help me put it to rest. This time, I got it on the first try. Upon finishing the spell in the basement, the house began shaking. When I say the house, I mean the whole house, basement and all. I'd never experienced an earthquake before, but it seemed like the only logical explanation for what was happening. It wasn't until I looked around the room during the madness that I realized it was the spell's doing. There, on the far wall, shaking with the rest of the house, was the attic door. I wondered if the spell had somehow summoned it, simultaneously causing the house to wobble. The tremor eventually stopped and I was left with the door, lending credence to my theory. I waited for a few minutes, thinking the door would open, but it did not. It seemed that I'd have to do it myself. I wasn't too happy about it, but I'd come too far to back out now. I gathered my wits and walked over to the door. I proceeded to swing it open, without fear, just as I had upstairs. Behind the door was a surprise. It was the attic. The attic upstairs. Everything was the same. Only there was a man standing in the window. Hearing me open the door, he turned around. His eyes widened when he saw me. He ran so fast in my direction that I didn't even have enough time to take more than a single step back. He rushed through the doorway and into the basement. He turned back around and slammed the attic door shut, making sure to lock the deadbolt. He turned to me, grabbed my shoulders, and looked me dead in the eye. I was baffled and scared for my life. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. After expressing his thanks, the man let go of me and ran upstairs, but not before turning back around and offering me some advice. Whatever you do, don't go in there. He gestured towards the attic door before bolting upstairs. I ran after him, wanting to ask some questions, but when I got upstairs, it was already too late. My front door was open, and I could see him running down the dirt road towards town. And that was that. I've slept every night since then with no noises or paranormal issues whatsoever. I even set the cameras and voice recorder a few times to make sure. They didn't catch a damn thing. I don't know what the hell happened, but I'm sure of one thing. The man that came out from behind the attic door was no ghost. It was a living, breathing person. The end. What'd you guys think? Thanks guys. And to everyone who gifted subs and subscribed, thank you so much. I'm really sorry for not saying it during the story. I'm trying to be a little bit better by not stopping. Too long just because unwilling to open the damn door. I can kind of agree with you on that one and see and completely like understand your viewpoint on that. I don't know why there was an actual real man in the attic. So it seemed like he was trapped in some weird like other realm, or like what do you call it when there's like two split dimensions? Ever just find a wizard who fucked up real bad in your basement and attic? That's pretty much what the story should be called. Oh my gosh. Yeah, alternate universe. I think that's maybe what was happening. He like got caught or something. Thank you. I do think the story was a bit long. It could have been shortened for sure, but I think that it was a lot it was a lot better written than a lot of other stories. A lot of times when I read creepypastas, a lot of things are like misspelled and things are put in a weird order of like sentence structure, so it was really easy to read. He got trapped and the ghost stuff was him trying to get out. It was a nice way to explain everything without explaining anything. I do agree with that too. That's a nice way to put it. You're amazing. My friend has watched you for ages. He's listening now. Would you mind saying, hi, Dean? Hi, Dean. Thank you so much for watching my channel, and I really appreciate your support. And you're very welcome. Thank you so much. My man's locked himself in the attic dimension and forgot the key. I'm really glad you guys enjoyed the stories tonight. How did you guys enjoy the random stream that you didn't even know would exist? Was it okay? Is there more? Can I go watch slime? Yes, there's no more. You can go watch, I'm guessing it's anime. Definitely, you can go. It's alright, I'm gonna be wrapping up. Oh, I love you guys very much. Oh, I think you're cool too, Sam. Anyone who's come in from either of the raids or any of the raids today, hello and welcome and thanks for being here. When will you be back? Well, technically, I'm not scheduled to come back for another 6 days, but when you start to get tired and it's really late and you're looking at the clock and you can't sleep, check if I'm on, and maybe I'll be here reading you to sleep. You'll just have to find me, won't you? To those that need to go to bed, go to sleep. I do, when I have time, highlight all the stories, and then when I have extra time, I upload them to YouTube, so definitely go follow my YouTube channel. And thank you so much, Same Old Shane, I appreciate that. No, I didn't like this. I'm scared and can't sleep. I'm sorry. Another sneaky surprise stream to finish off that story. Yeah. Honestly, I'll probably be here tomorrow night, guys, for a little bit of storytelling. It was a lot of fun. I want to just test and see what you guys thought, and it seems like it's been a lot of fun. So, I like reading, and there was no pressure to make a stream schedule for it, so, you know, it is what it is. But thanks. Like I said, I don't really think that I have an accent, but thank you. If it's not bedtime yet, then you're definitely safe. Ritaka, I'm about to end. Good morning. Did you just wake up? Please go follow my wonderful and lovely friend who often pees in his pants. I mean, what? I'm Ritaka is a very cute and wholesome VTuber, so go follow him. And J2, thank you so much for the bits. For everyone that cheered today and gave bits while I was reading. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Well, I'm going to shout out I'm Ritaka. I think he's going to finish, what's that game you were playing? You've been awake. Of course I'm going to expose you. You're playing horror games and you pee in your pants. Go follow him right now. This very moment. I'm glad it turned out to be an attic wizard. Oh, what a cute boy indeed. Kamui, I told you. Yeah, he's playing Outlast and he's beating it today. Ritaka's adorable. He's like absolutely just like cheek squishable. He's so cute. Aw, Jabir, thank you so much for being so kind. Thank you so much for the cheers. I appreciate it. Do you guys want me to read urban legends in the future? I don't mind. I'm really glad you like the reading. It's a lot of fun. I feel like I'm still interacting with you guys even though I'm not interacting with you guys, so that makes a little bit of sense. You know what I mean? Like, I really like horror games, but I feel like this is a sense of... It's like the most ultimate feeling that we're all listening to the same thing and we're all experiencing this atmosphere and story together as one big whole. And if you think about it, that's like a crazy thing to kind of put together in your mind. Many of us from around the world are all experiencing this story at the same time. Is there a cyber horror category for stories? I think there is, actually, yes. I've never read any SCPs. I've always thought they were maybe a little bit dull, but if you guys want me to read those too, I don't mind. Have you guys followed I'm Ritaka yet? Or Kamui Kushi? Kamui. I don't understand why I said Kamui. That's not what I meant to say. But... Wow, there's not a lot of people on. 1 second. Eldritch horror. Do you guys want Eldritch horror? Call me whatever you want. Just be nice. I'm gonna call you by your name. Kamui Kushi. Kamui. Oh, thank you, Masaru. I appreciate that. UrbanLegendsOnline.com. What's this? I want to look at this. The Amish Ghost Bridge of Pinecraft, Florida. The Four Thieves. Devil's Tramping Ground. The Ghost of Mud Lake. The Shadow Man. What's that? Hi, Greshkovic. I'm doing well. How are you? Hi, Kawaii Batfangs. Mwah, how are you? Oh. Wait, let me read this real quick. It's so short. This one just says, The Shadow Man. This is Urban Legends Online. Trust me, before I read this, do you guys want me to tell you a real story? One of my stories that I experienced. I don't know if a lot of you guys have heard it already. I've only told it once on the stream before a few weeks ago, but I'm happy to share it with you guys if you're willing to listen. Thank you, Grishkovic. I appreciate it. A long time ago when I was younger, something happened in the house, which I said this last time. I don't know if I feel comfortable sharing quite yet. I don't know. I feel like you guys would think I was really weird, so I'll just skip that part. Something really bad happened, like supernaturally. It was really weird. But some time had passed after that, and no one was home, and I was in my room, and the door was closed. And there's two doors in my room. One of them leads to a hallway that leads to the front area where the front door is. And oh, you're still here, Nimmer. Hi. Hello. And one of them leads to a bathroom. I was sitting on my bed, and I was practicing my flute at the time. And my TV was on and it wasn't muted. And I had this big kind of boom box. And you know those TVs that are like back in the day, they were really thick, and they there wasn't really any such thing as flat screen TVs around this time. And you know, when something is muted, the captions have the black background and the white text, the usual. And I could hear it. It was on. It wasn't muted. And as I was practicing my flute, my jukebox, like my boombox, had turned on. And as I had gone up to turn it off, which I don't know why it had turned on, I looked at the TV, and even still hearing that it was on, the word taunt was like spread across my TV in the text as if it was muted. It was like TTTAAUUNNT. And in that moment, Jaber, hey, thank you so much for all those bits. Thank you so much. That's really kind of you. So in that moment that I had read that across my TV, there was this sinking, crushing feeling like in my chest that there was something there. And when I had turned to run out of my door that did not lead to the bathroom, I tried to open my front door and it wouldn't open, but there's no locks on the door. You can't lock it. But it was stuck. I couldn't move it. And as I had backed away, there was this big looming shadow from the floor all the way to the top of the ceiling, almost like overarching, like over me. And it was like there was a person there. Like you could feel it, like every inch of your skin could feel that there was this weird presence there, and it was horrible. And I can't describe it. It was nothing like I've ever felt in my entire life. And I immediately had ran out of my other door that led to the bathroom, ran through the hallway, shot out the front door without closing it behind me. And I ran all the way across the street to this other girl's house that we used to be friends, and I hated her. I hated her guts at the time. She hated me, I hated her, but I went to her house. I made her let me come in, and I was just a mess. And my dad was pissed. He came home, the door was open. He didn't believe me. I told him that there was something in the house. And I forever, until we moved from that house, always either avoided coming home or I had to have like a crucifix in my backpack. There was no way I was going in that house again. It was awful. It was one of the most horrible experiences I've ever had, and I never want to experience again, but I 100% believe that shadow people exist. They are real in my mind because I saw it, and I hate them. Don't like it. That's one of my stories. You're welcome. I've never encountered anything weird or spooky in New Zealand though, so yeah, that wasn't very fun at all. And I was really little, so it definitely traumatized me for a while. Oh no, bunny boy, are you okay? Oh my god, that would have traumatized me forever. Jeez Louise, man. Ugh. I'm doing well, Vlad. Thank you for asking. How are you? I'm kind of in the middle on that, Warden. I think for me, it's more of the more you're aware of them, but the more you give them fear, it makes it worse. But I do agree. I think the more you talk about it, the more you think about it, the more you worry about it, the more you acknowledge things, they become more apparent. So I don't really talk about it much. And kind of Troy knows the same thing. It gets to a point where if there's certain like topics or whatever that get too close to it, we talk on it too long, I just am like, I don't want to talk about it. So I'm like in between on that thought process. Hi Droin, how are you? And welcome. Thank you so much for sharing and the beautiful stream as always. I'm going to sleep. Now it's almost 6 a.m. Have an amazing rest of your stream. Much love. Hey, guys, please go follow Nimmer. Thank you so much for the raid today. Thank you so much for staying so darn long in this stream. Get some sleep. It is so late. Rest well and have a wonderful day tomorrow. Guys, please go check out Nimmer. He is an absolute treat to watch. He is so entertaining and so kind and fun. And once you're part of this community, that's it. You found your crew. It's so fun. Please go follow him. He's amazing. Thank you, Nimmer. Nimmer, you didn't have to do that. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. I really appreciate it, and I'm so glad you're in our lives. Thanks, man. Good night, Nimmer. And Jabera, goodness, with all of the cheers and support, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the bits. I appreciate that. Thank you. Autobots, roll out. That one was for Nimmer. So this one's called The Shadow Man. It says nobody knows for sure who or what the Shadow Man is. But it may be the ghost of a man who was convicted of stalking and kidnapping children. He was caught at a home he had broken into a few days before and was being dragged off the gallows after his trial when he overpowered the guards and ran into the woods. A huge search was organized and the entire forest was thoroughly searched, but he was never found. A few years later, children started going missing again, and some people thought it must be him. Their suspicions were put to rest, however, after one of the missing children came back. The 5-year-old boy was questioned, and during a police interview, he revealed that he was captured by a shadow man with big red eyes and a funny hat. Since then, there have been many more reports of this shadow man. The shadow is described as being a shadow of a tall man with a bowler derby hat and glowing red eyes. He can assume almost any form he chooses and slip through any door. He will plague children with nightmares and a strange man in a bowler's hat grabbing them and taking them away to an old hut. After a few days, he will creep into the child's room and stare at them with his glowing red eyes until they wake up. The child will then be petrified with fear, and then that is when the shadow man will whisk them off, and the child will never be seen again. The scariest part is that he could be anywhere, at any time, and you can never be sure if he is there, watching you. Bro, that I don't like that image. Check that out. Ooh, ooh, I don't like that. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. You would I don't like that. La 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 la. Megalodon. Oh, hey, I'm so glad. Welcome on in. Oh, yeah, Insidious. Definitely, I see that for sure. There's a lot of these. A lot of these urban legends. The giant purple octopus of Lake Ontario. Is that really an urban legend? The reason why Mr. Rogers wore a sweater? Okay, I'm gonna click that. 1 second. I'm intrigued. Absolutely, Vlad. Oh, it's kind of long. Is it gonna be scary? I want it to be scary. Urban legends are scary, right? If I read this, am I gonna be disappointed? No, I don't think I've seen that behind her eyes. Oh, wow. Way to have a long story for no reason. So it says he hid away the tattoos and his past life and won our hearts with his quiet wit and charm. So apparently Mr. Rogers is covered in tattoos. The end. Oh, that sounds weird, Vlad. The Swiffer wet jet warning? Okay, these are not scary. Who sent this to me? I've seen a shadow person too. I used to live with people who were messing with pagan and occult stuff. They thought they knew what they were doing, but the energy always felt very off about that place. Especially the room I stayed in. The shadowy figure came out of the mirror and loomed over me for what felt like a couple of minutes and then vanished. That sounds awful. I hate it. I don't like that. That sounds like an awful experience. I'm really sorry. I would have just peed right in that moment. It was awesome listening to you. Check out Psychosis on Creepypasta website. It's a good read. Let me look it up now. And have a wonderful sleep or wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for being here. Psychosis Creepypasta. Oh, looks like I read it already. Oh, dang. This is a long one. Okay. Well. I know that a lot of you are starting your days. So to those of you that are just waking up, good morning. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for stopping in today. For those of you who haven't slept yet, close your eyes. Go to sleep. And sleep well. Thank you so much for stopping by today. Let's see. Let's see where I want to put you guys. You know what, unfortunately, there's not a lot of people on, so I'm gonna give y'all to the good ol' Has. Are you guys okay with that? If you guys want some Monster Hunter hunting, some good RPGing, go show Has vs. RPG some love. But in the meantime... No, I'm not going to talk about my health quite yet. I don't think it's time. But, Thank you so much to the bits. I appreciate it. You guys have a wonderful sleep. And remember, when it gets late tomorrow and you're sleepy, hate my call, 'cause I might just be back with more stories to put you to sleep. I'm new here and I'm enjoying your content. Tanka, welcome to the stream. I hope to see you and everyone again soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day and your night. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye. Good night, everyone. Be sure not to leave your doors cracked open, or someone might crawl in. Don't wake up in the middle of the night, 'cause you just might catch someone watching you. I'll see you very, very soon.